Yeah, 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 yeah. How y'all feel out there? How y'all doing? How your mama doing? How your cousin them doing? Yeah, yeah. Saturday. It's the night. We out here. I'm gonna ask a couple questions. We just gonna watch this video and then because I thought this is a good question. When did Africans first come to America? So we're gonna let the experts speak, and if you guys want, you guys could chime in. I might break it up just for the algorithm so we don't get flagged. But let's let them talk, and then we'll have a discussion about what Cuz is saying. So think about it, and then give us your answer. When did Africans first come to America?
Good evening. Ask any youngster, or any adult for that matter, when did Africans first come to America? And the answer will be in 1619 as indentured servants. Well, that answer is no longer valid, according to Dr. Ivan van Sertima, author of They Came Before Columbus. Dr. van Sertima, an anthropologist and historian, is a graduate of London University and Rutgers Graduate School of Anthropology. He is also a literary critic and has been honored by the Nobel Committee of the Swedish Academy by being asked to nominate candidates for the Nobel Prize in Literature for the past 5 years. Currently, he is professor of African Studies at Rutgers University. Dr. Van Sertima, up until relatively recently, what had scholars been saying about Africans in the pre-Columbus period in the Americas?
Well, there is a very profound distortion of African history. Almost all of the books that have been written on Africa have been studies of primitives, of people in small communities just barely scratching the soil, people in jungles, etc. There is no appreciation of the fact that after the conquest, or just around the time of the conquest and after, you have a tremendous breaking up of African societies. It's not just a question of tearing these people out of their country, throwing them across the Atlantic as slaves, but the smashing of many things. It's as if you had dropped several hydrogen bombs on Africa. So that what you see afterwards is just the remnants, the ruins of the worst in Africa. The African, therefore, the image of the African ancestor has been built up upon the lowest common denominator. When we go back to European history, European heritage, we always go back to its great heroes, its magnificent achievements. But when we go back into Africa, historians and anthropologists have always looked for the worst. When in fact you begin to study African history seriously, and recent archaeological discoveries have now throwing up remarkable things. They've found within recent years, for example, that the Africans were producing steel in Tanzania, East Africa, 1500 years before the Europeans. That they had not only entered the age of iron before Europe, but they had jumped into the age of steel. Now, what has happened to this? If you go back into Tanzania today, you cannot find this. You cannot find that kind of development. Therefore, you begin to be aware that colonization, the conquest of Europe, didn't drag people up. It actually smashed things that were happening there. Now these things are coming out of the earth because archaeology is beginning to recover these things. African history cannot be recovered, and even American history, early history, cannot be recovered like European history, because Europe has had the advantage after the conquest of having about 5 centuries of fairly settled history. They can go to their libraries, etc., in spite of the wars. But in Africa, the library is in the ground. The record of what has happened, the broken record, lies there. Now they're finding astronomical observatories. 2 years ago, they found that the Africans were involved in the most complex astronomy, that they had plotted a whole star system. This is in Kenya, at Namorotunga. They found among the Dogon in West Africa that Africans had plotted an invisible star 700 years before it was discovered by European astronomers in the 20th century, and that the plotting of the orbit and trajectory of this star, which is a white dwarf, an invisible star, Sirius B, the trajectory and plotting, the plotting of the orbits and trajectories are as accurate as that done by satellites in the 20th century. Recently, yesterday, in fact, just before I came here, the New York Times brought out a startling article showing that the Africans had entered the domestication of cattle in East Africa 7,000 years before it occurred anywhere else in the world. And this is one of the bases. This is one of the bases of civilization. So that you have to look again at the African. It is because the capacity of the African, the potential of the African has been reduced in our imagination and our consciousness by these studies of primitives that we do not realize that the African was involved in things that are just as important, just as significant, and in some areas even more significant than what was happening in Europe before the Industrial Revolution.
And he didn't mention Mali. He didn't mention Shanghai. He didn't mention the universities of Timbuktu. You know, he left out some good stuff too. There's a lot of good stuff going on. He didn't mention the kingdoms of the Zulu. He didn't mention, you know, the conquest of the Pun, the Punic, you know, right? The Berbers. So yeah, Africa has a rich history.
What is the main idea in your book, They Came Before Columbus?
The main idea in my book is to show that early America, America before the coming of Columbus, was a far more complex society than people imagined, and that it involved Africans. Africans came in here. They came in on several occasions. Sometimes these were accidents. Sometimes they were on purpose, and that they had an influence, an actual impact, an influence upon the formation of certain American civilizations.
When we say pre-Columbus period, what are we talking about?
We're talking about long before 1492. It is absurd, and only fools can still believe that Columbus discovered the Americas in 1492. In fact, Columbus never even came to this continent. Columbus wandered about in the Caribbean islands just on the very edge of the great civilizations. Cortez came here in 1519, and he entered Mexico. And Mexico, when I speak of Mexico in this program, do not confuse it simply with the Mexico we know today. That was a center of a civilization that spread over a great part of this continent. That when Cortez entered, he had come out of the heart of Europe, and he said when he entered Native America, when he entered Mexico, and he saw the pyramids and the palaces and the floating gardens and the zoos and the aqueducts and the running baths, he says, I have not seen its like in Europe.
So the main idea in your book, you were dealing with that initially.
The main idea in my book is that there were visits to this continent from the old world, that there were visits to the Native Americans in this continent, and those visits included Africans. And two of the visits of Africans were major and significant, and they affected American civilization. And American civilization was far more complex, far more advanced than was formerly believed. Earth satellites a few months ago revealed that the Native Americans, long before the coming of Europeans, had the most intricate network of irrigation canals ever discovered in agriculture.
Okay, let us clear up one thing before we go any further. In the book They Came Before Columbus, you use the terms Negro Nubian, Negro Egyptian. Why?
Well, that in some ways is unfortunate. I found it necessary to use the word Negro. I no longer use it. I'm now the editor of the Journal of African Civilizations, and I use the word Africoid for African types, skulls, etc. The reason why I was forced to use the word I had been trained in European anthropology and archaeology. All the books I had read used this term, not necessarily with the social implications which it has here. They use this term to separate Africoid types of people from Caucasoids or Mongoloid types, Asiatic and European types. Also, it is a word that is
Wow. So they use the word Negro to separate the Africans. Wow. Did you notice that? Let's play that one more time. I apologize.
all the books I had read use this term, not necessarily with the social implications which it has here. They use this term to separate Africoid types of people from Caucasoids or Mongoloid types, Asiatic and European types. Also, it is a word that has entered neutrally without any social significance in the languages of many people who do not have the same kind of prejudices as people in the Anglo-American and some of the Western nations who became colonial powers. Like in some languages in Europe, they use the term Niger, simply meaning black, without any of those connotations. Furthermore, the problem lay in that the word black could not always be used because if you spoke of a black god, it may not be an African. You can have a black god who is not an African. Tezcatlipoca, for example, is a Native American god who is black, but he's not African. But there is a god, Nawalpili, who is both black and African. He's not only black in a ritual or symbolic sense, but he has Africoid features. So that was the problem. You can have a black god who is not an African.
Wow. Tetsukoto. Tetsukoto, huh? Is a black god that's not an African. How about that? You can have a black god that's not an African. That sounds crazy. That sounds new. You can have a black god that's not an African? Wow.
The word black could not always be used because if you spoke of a black god, it may not be an African. You can have a black god who is not an African. Tezcatlipoca, for example, is a Native American god who is black, but he's not African.
But he is not African, huh? That seems to be a problem, guys. That seems to be a problem here. I don't know. That seems to be a problem here. You have a black god that's not an African. How do you have a black god that's not an African? Wow. Let me drop this link. I want to make sure you guys are ready to get the link. Peace out to Justice in a building. Hope y'all enjoying the build. We're gonna let him build. Of course, I ain't trying to get no strikes, but yeah, we're gonna let him go. Justices, Africans had absolutely no impact on the Americas. He says they have no impact on the Americas, huh, Justin? That's great. But again, you can have a black god that's not an African. He is not an African. That's amazing that someone can admit that and admit that, hey, we had to make him an African. Wow, that's amazing.
Those connotations. Furthermore, the problem lay in that the word black could not always be used because if you spoke of a black god, it may not be an African. You can have a black god who is not an African. Tezcatlipoca, for example, is a Native American god who is black, but he's not African. But there is a god, Nawalpili, who is both black and African. He's not only black in a ritual or symbolic sense, but he has Africoid features. So that was the problem I faced. And I had to make those connections because when people talked of Nubians, they didn't often realize they were talking about black people.
In the first few pages of They Came Before Columbus, you write about when Columbus himself heard about about Africans, the possibility of Africans having been here years before. What about that?
Yes, so Columbus is the first man to give historical witness and evidence of Africans in America before him. In his journals, in his letters, you have evidence of this. He mentions that when he came back from his first voyage, he went to see the Portuguese. He didn't actually go there on purpose. A storm drew him into Lisbon, Portugal. He'd been sent out by the Spanish. The Portuguese invited him to the court, and there he learned from the Portuguese, who were moving across Africa, who had set up the first fort among Europeans in Africa, that African sailors had actually crossed over the Western Ocean and had found a land mass in the south. This was not what Columbus had found. Columbus found islands, which are now known as the Caribbean islands, but he had not gone onto a continental mass. The Africans had found the actual continental mass. And the Portuguese insisted that this continental mass in the south was 370 leagues, which is about 15 to 1600 miles away, according to whether you count the league as 4 or 4.5. There were differences in counting of a league, but it was about 1500 to 1600 miles away from Africa. And they pointed this out. And Columbus went back to Spain and he insisted, because the Portuguese promised to help him, he insisted that they should draw a line across the world and that this line should be drawn 370 leagues away from the Cape Verde Islands across Africa, and that Spain would claim lands he had found on the other side, and if Portuguese found land within that line on the other side, they could claim it. And Brazil, which was visited by the Africans, was on the other side of the line. And this line was drawn in 1494. It was drawn up in June 1494, before any Europeans had come to South America, on the basis of African knowledge.
Okay, let's get down to the crux of the matter. How did these Africans come to the New World?
Okay, now one of the things, as I have pointed out in the metal,
Brother Justice said none of this is. He said this is philosophy, huh? It's not backed up by history books, nor is it backed up by the Bible. Man, can you help us understand what the Bible says, brother? How does you say the people of the Americas were Israelites? Can you help us with that one? I'm trying to understand that too. That's a good one. If you could hit the link when you get a chance and let me know how it lines up with the Bible that the people in America are Israelites. We get back to the build though. We'll be here.
metallurgy, like the steel, etc., in astronomy, etc., there is a profound misunderstanding of African capacity. The Africans had ships. This is one of them. This is in East Africa. This ship, this is just a model which I found in Fort Mombasa in Kenya. This ship is a 70-tonner. Ships like these in the 13th century before Columbus took elephants to China, right across the Indian Ocean. But this is just, they had ships like this in East Africa before Christ, but there were ships in North Africa along the Mediterranean that were far more sophisticated than any ships the Europeans had. European shipping is not even European. The sail Columbus used comes out of the Arab-African world. The astrolabe comes out of the Arab-African world. They found in the desert before Columbus, in the period before Columbus, the Africans were using compasses and nautical instruments to navigate the desert. They had these instruments which were used to navigate the sea. They've done studies recently of navigation in West Africa showing the Africans did have boats along the Niger. The African had boats that could take 3 camels aboard ship. They had cabins, all of these along the Niger, which opens, if you go down the Senegambia at a certain point, it opens out into the Atlantic. And the Africans did have empires with an Atlantic border.
This is a simple question. It's going to sound simple, but you're talking about black people.
Yes.
Okay.
And on several occasions, Africans were able to make that journey. If you look at a map of currents, and we will look more closely at this later on in the program, you will see there are 3 currents that take you from Africa to America. Africa is half the distance from America as is Europe. Not only is it half the distance, It is far easier to get from Africa to America because the currents take you automatically. In other words, you don't have to know of the existence of America. Even Columbus was not aware of the existence of America. He came off the North Atlantic. Columbus thought he was going to India, and he struck out for the latitude of Japan, hoping to land in India, and he swore he was in India. That is why people like myself are called West Indians. I'm the Indian he found in the West. And Americans are called American Indians because he thought they were in India. So that you have these currents which take you automatically. European ships did not use these currents until the second.
This guy's a great researcher, y'all. He's a masterful researcher. I mean, you can hear where a lot of um people are getting their information from, right? You can hear it. Like he has those talking points. You know, Columbus thought he was going to India. He made a mistake, right? He knows all the talking points. Maybe he created them. Obviously, he created the talking points actually, because before him, they were using the term Negro, not African. Okay.
Voyage, when Columbus used that knowledge which he got from the Portuguese about Africans, on the third voyage, sorry, on the second voyage, Columbus heard from the American natives in Hispaniola, which is now known as Haiti and San Domingo, that Africans had come to the Native Americans. The Americans told Columbus that. He recorded it in his journals that Africans had come to them trading in gold-tipped spears. Columbus sent samples of those spears. They were studied, they were surveyed in Spain, and they were found to contain the same ratio of gold, silver, and copper alloys as those found in West African Guinea.
So were these Africans swept along this current,
yes,
or did they come purposely?
Initially, it was an accident. Just like initially Columbus's so-called discovery, rather his coming.
Why does he always compare the Africans to Columbus? That's distracting you. We want to hear some information, buddy. Why do you keep bringing up Columbus? The guy asked you a simple question. Why do you keep bringing up Columbus? I'm with you. I'm on your team here. I want to hear this information. But you keep bringing up Columbus like you got something to hide. Because now you went to his third voyage. What happened to his first voyage when he described the people that he met? That would be interesting if you mentioned that.
In here in a late period was an accident.
What's the name of this current?
There are several of them. There's the South Equatorial Current. There's the North Equatorial Current. These currents come, there's a current coming off the Senegambia coast. There's a current coming off the Cape Verde Islands. There's a current coming up from the southern part of Africa. These currents all move towards South America, into the Caribbean, into the Gulf of Mexico. And there's a return current. And we have evidence that Africans not only went, but in a late pre-Columbian period, they also returned, because we found American things which Africans brought back. Just as we have found African things in America, they found American things which Africans brought back with them, such as the cotton in the Cape Verde Islands.
Are these?
Whoa. We found American things that the Africans brought back. So they brought back cotton to Cape Verde, but they didn't bring it back to the continent of Africa. Now, Cape Verdeans, they'll tell you they not no Africans. You never meet a Cape Verde in the world that'll tell you he an African. That will never happen. But okay, Cape Verdeans got cotton, but Africans don't. Wow.
This current still.
Oh yes, for thousands of years, these currents have been in existence. This has been tested. 200 small boats, some of them smaller than the major African boats, have crossed the Atlantic. They have been tested. Thor Heyerdahl, the Norwegian explorer, got Africans to build a ship used long before the birth of Christ, used in Egypt and Ethiopia. And this ship was made of papyrus reed, and the scientists said it couldn't float. And Heyerdahl insisted, and the Africans under Abdullah de Jibrin built this ship, and it crossed the Atlantic successfully to America.
From what part of Africa did these Africans come?
The Africans came at various times from different areas. The one that I want to deal with, because most of the evidence exists for this, is Africans who came out of the Egyptian Nubian world. I'll call it the Egypto-Nubian world, around 800 years before Christ. I'll explain to you how I arrive at that date, how they arrived at that date, and I'll show you the types of evidence. Now, I want you first to look at this head, this stone head.
Okay.
Now, this head, they found a dozen of these.
But why is it always the Egyptians, buddy? Damn. I mean, everybody gotta be tied to the Egyptians, huh? Okay, let's go.
These heads. They found them in a very specific area. Before we go to the area, look at the head carefully. The lips, the very generous type of lips that you find in the tropical areas, the Africoid type. The broad nose with the very broad flared type of nostril and the kind of flattened base. The brow ridge. And look at the helmet. That's a very peculiar type of helmet. It does not occur anywhere else in America. It has a strap along the face, falling along the ear, and it has a circular ear plug. Those helmets, exact type of helmet, were found in the Egyptian world in this period. What period? The period that has been dated by carbon-14 datings. Now, how do they arrive at that datings? They found these heads, and I want to show you the map.
Wow, he didn't give you a date, though. He didn't give you a date. He didn't give you a date. He just said the date. Say no, tell us the date, sir. Please, we're interested. But we're just watching. I'm sorry.
Now, so it's to show you precisely where the datings were made by scientists.
Okay.
Now look at that map carefully. That's the Gulf of Mexico. I want to remind the audience, and I want to make it quite clear that when we're talking about Mexico, we're not just simply talking about Mexico today.
Let's look at the map, guys. Do you see any dates? He said he's going to tell us some dates. I don't see any dates. It says later. It said later classic Mayan. Is this area later occupied by classic Mayan? That's not a date. Classic Mayan has nothing to do with Olmec. Well, I mean, early Maya has Olmec, not classic. Classic Maya, Olmecs are gone. Early Maya is Olmec overlap. But I'm just listening
carefully. That's the Gulf of Mexico. I want to remind the audience, and I want to make it quite clear that when we're talking about Mexico, we're not just simply talking about Mexico today. This is something that happened 3,000 years ago. That's very recent in history. America was peopled 50,000 years ago across the Bering Straits. This is very recent in American history. The United States is only 200 years old, its boundaries. So do not assume for a moment that we're talking about something outside of the United States. That is a center of civilization that occurred around 1,000 years before Christ. In that specific area, and I want to go back to that map,
okay,
because in that specific area, I'll show you where they found stone heads.
Wow.
Now you see that?
Let's think about that. Let's think about that. So 3,000 years ago, that's 1,000 years before Christ. That's what he said, right? So he's doing this with the Egyptian classical period. But he's actually talking about, like, wow. He just compared. He's saying that they're both here and there at the same time, and they're both Africans. Wow, that's amazing. Let's hear that one more time. I'm sorry, I've never heard that before.
But do not assume for a moment that we're talking about something outside of the United States. That is a center of civilization that occurred around 1,000 years before Christ. In that specific area, and I want to go back to that map,
okay,
because in that specific area, I'll show you where they found stone heads. Now, you see that thing looking like a basin there? That is the center of the first major American civilization.
What?
In that center, and specific points marked by diamonds, you may not be able to see the diamond triangle so easily here, but in that specific area, at Tres Zapotes, at San Lorenzo in Veracruz, and at La Venta, they found a dozen African type stone heads, vast heads, 6 to 9 feet high, weighing from 10 to 40 tons. The hugest things ever found in American sculpture, built of pure stone, stone which had to be taken from quarries 60 to 80 miles downriver. Suddenly, these things begin to appear, and 4 of them appear at a place called La Venta within that basin area. La Venta was the holy capital of the Olmec civilization. And on the platform, the religious platform where those people worshiped, they found a wooden religious platform in which 4 of the heads were embedded. The stone could not be dated, but the wooden platform was inextricably linked up with the stone. The archaeologists took carbon samples, 9 carbon samples, they dated it. It gave a dating 814 plus or minus 134 BC, which means that anything between around 900 and something BC, right down to about 618 BC, you have some strange foreign movement of foreigners into that area. They
Now, I don't know why he's saying they're foreigners. Again, he's saying that there's strange foreign movement, but there's evidence of those people being there. The culture just was bigger. You need to. We'll talk about it, but there's no foreign, nothing.
not only found this type of head, they not only found these type of features, they not only found this type of helmet, but they found terracottas, that is clay portraits of Africans that did not have the helmet, where you could see the texture of hair quite distinct from the Native American head, because the Native American was an Asiatic coming across the Bering Strait, and you have lots of sculptures of that Asiatic figure, and this figure was quite distinct. And they found in the dry areas of the Olmec world skeletons that could be linked with continental African types, Africoid types. Professor Wierzinski.
Now, again, remember, before him, they were calling these people Negroes. He helped them change it. He writes for the Pulitzer Prize and Press. He's a scholar. He's helping them change the word Negro into Africoid. That's what he does.
A Polish skull expert showed that these were African type skeletons.
What purpose did these stone heads serve?
They were religious. They were the sorts of things that you do even today. You make statues to commemorate things. You see a series of those statues there. The one in the middle is not American. The one in the middle is a king, an African king belonging to the same period. He is
Yeah, you can tell he got the see. This dude got the snake on his head. He got the cobra on his head. See the difference. Let me tell you the difference between what he's talking about. I'm sorry, I gotta just jump in there. These ain't. He's saying this is religion. This ain't religion. These are stars. These men are stars. They're stars. They're ball players. You know what I'm saying? But they're also leaders and generals. That's what these Olmec heads represent. They're leaders and generals, but they're stars because they play games. Like the games was life or death. The games were war. People might, start a war over a game. Like the game is the war. You know what I'm saying? So the people that won the war, those are rock stars. Those are celebrities. You know what I'm saying? Those are the priest kings. But the Olmecs, they created the priest king. I'm just saying, the Olmec created the priest king, but he was a warrior too. Don't get it confused. And it's totally different than this Egyptian. But,
the Harka, who reigned somewhere around 700 to 654 BC. And before him, there was a whole line of African kings in Egypt, because that is a period from about 1054 BC right down to about 800 BC. You have.
And let's look at these niggas. They don't look nothing alike. Nothing alike. Look at his nose and look at his nose. Look at his lips and look at his lips. His nose, his nose, his lips, his lips. They don't look nothing alike. This is more of that African. We all black. This is I'm gonna take a black guy and make him an African guy. That's what he said. Like I mean, this is amazing. This man said he had a black guy that he made an African guy. That's crazy.
Africans and Libyans reigning together, having a
They don't look nothing alike. They don't look nothing alike. Just the style, you can say, the craftsmanship. You can give them credit with the intricacies. You know what I mean? With the lips and the cheeks. You can give them credit. The style. But not the face. They don't look nothing. Look at this little peanut head ass nigga. This nigga got a peanut head for real. And he got an alkaline nose. Look like he from the mountains somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Alpine ass.
sort of what is known as the Libyco-Nubian dynasties. And then you have the Nubian dynasties, which run from 800 to 654 BC. So during that whole period, covered by the carbon-14 datings where Olmec culture and civilization appears in America, you have these people appearing in the Egypto-Nubian world. And what is significant is that the same place and the same time these heads and skeletons and clay portraits appear with Africoid-type hair and features and helmets, you have things suddenly occurring in the American world that do not occur before. The first pyramid is built in America in that period. It appears on the very same religious platform where the Africoid heads are found. For the first time, the Americans are making these huge statues when before they were making small things largely out of clay. For the first time, they're working in monuments.
Right. Small things, but they had the same facial features for 1,000 years before they started making these big heads. They always had those clay heads, right? They just made them bigger. So that's what I'm saying. How do you saying they're foreigners? You hear how he contradicted himself? He said that this is foreign. Now you said it just got bigger. They was doing the same thing, but now it got bigger. So is it foreign or is it just bigger? They had an expansion. They had an expansion. It was a boom.
Mental stone. For the first time, the Americans are moving massive blocks of stone from quarries 80 miles away downriver. Nobody, no one in the ancient world mastered the art of transporting vast blocks of stone downriver for sculpture as the Egyptians. The Americans had never done it before, and suddenly they're using a ritual orientation, north-south axis for their pyramids, for their religious platforms. That axis, the north-south axis, is an axis that was used only by the Egyptians at that time. That north-south axis is absolutely important.
I mean, he is really giving an excuse for why the Egyptians were started by Americans. Because again, we know why the Olmec used that north-south axis. They were pointing towards Venus. It made sense. They were looking towards crops and corn and the flooding. What were the Egyptians doing? Huh?
Important. The Egyptians were so, the African type I'm talking about, because the Africans, they're now establishing, New York Times reported last year on March the 1st that they found the Egyptian hieroglyphs in Africa before it moves up into Egypt. And Egypt is in Africa, but south of Egypt, that is among the black Africans. They found that the palace symbols, the temples, the religious and political symbols are found in the southern part of Egypt among the Ethiopians before it moves up later into Egypt. The pyramids are built, the most fantastic engineering ever done in the world until our present day, were built by Africans.
Okay, these stone heads, were there any non-African stone heads?
There was one figure that was not as large as these. He was on a slab of stone, and he had a beard, and he had an aquiline nose, and he had a headdress which showed him to be Phoenician. Now, the Phoenician figure is very important because both in the Egyptian world at that time The Nubians, the black Nubians, were protecting the Phoenicians from the Assyrians. The Phoenicians had also moved. Princess Elisar had traveled with 300 Phoenicians down into North Africa. And they began intermarrying among black Africans in North Africa, just on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, from about 1000 BC right down until Carthage was built on the basis of that civilization. Recently, studies in Carthage, archaeological studies in Carthage, show that Carthaginian civilization, which included Hannibal and all those fantastic navies, that they were largely African. Now they study the skeletons, they have found it's a largely African civilization. So all of these things were happening around this time. And you get this Carthaginian type figure, this Phoenician type figure whom you find in Carthage of that period, and you find in the Nubian Egyptian world of that period. You see him among these Africoid types. And people, because they're accustomed to the modern world, which is only 500 years old since Columbus, they're accustomed to the black being a slave and thought of as a primitive. When they saw this fair-skinned figure with the aquiline nose beside him, they said he's the master and these are his slaves. If you go to the historical period, you find just the opposite, that Phoenician was a hired navigator, because the Phoenicians were involved in the import and export trade of the Egyptians and the Nubians, and they were up and down the Mediterranean. In fact, just a few years after this period, around 600 BC, we have historical records of the Phoenicians circling Africa, going right across the Atlantic and circling Africa.
Okay. Back to this controversy. There is more
I mean, like, woo! Back to the controversy, because you all over the place, cuz.
to this controversy in connection with the stone heads. Can you tell us some more about that? The kettle pots, I think it's deals with.
Yes, there are people who claim that those are football helmets or kettle cans, all sorts of things in order to reduce the significance of these figures. But more important is the attempt by traditional Americanists, conservative Americanists, to dismiss this whole thing and say this is a mystery. I was at a conference in Arizona recently, and a Dr. Thompson, who's written a book on the Mayan, he admitted after strong questioning by me that there was every human variety in pre-Columbian America. But he said just a few minutes later, he's absolutely sure the African was not among them. So I said, how could you have every human variety doesn't include the African? Isn't the African a human? This is the sort of contradiction in which conservative Americanists are involved.
We'll continue this next week, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. Thank you. For those of you who are interested in...
Wow. Let's take a second here again, man. So what do y'all think about that? Got the link in the comments section. Yeah. We're gonna get on to part 2 in a minute. But what y'all think about that? He seems like the guy that's responsible for the African. The African being in America. That seemed like him. He said that there was a Negro before. That they used to keep it separate. He always wants to advocate for the African. Seems like that he might have been the first guy that brought in the African. Let me play something that he said right quick. I think this was the most interesting thing I ever heard someone ever say. Let me see. Here we go.
Niger, simply meaning black, without any of those connotations. Furthermore, the problem lay in that the word black could not always be used, because if you spoke of a black god, it may not be an African. You can have a black god who is not an African.
See what I'm saying? Like, this is the contradiction that I'm seeing in America today. And he seems to be the forerunner of it. How can you have a black god that's not an African? Right? It makes sense to me, but why doesn't it make sense to everyone else? Because they want everyone black to be an African. You see how he knew what he was doing. This was strategic. You can have a black god who is not an African. So why are we having this debate 40 years later? What's the problem? The problem is you want our black God to be an African when you just said you can have a black God who's not an African. See how good this gets? How interesting this can be? I thought this was the most exciting thing he said. He said that you can have a black God who's not an African, but that's where the problem lies with these Pan Africans. That's where the problem lies with these revisionists. They don't want you to be black without an African. You can't have a black guy without an African. You know what I'm saying? They don't believe in such a thing. You can't have anything black without an African. Everything black to them is an African. That's how they're confused. He can't believe his lying eyes. Yeah, you can have a black guy who's not an African, but not as long as I'm alive. Do y'all see the hypocrisy? Not as long as I'm alive, you'll never have a black God that's not an African. You can have the word black and not be an African until he came along. Listen again.
In that the word black could not always be used, because if you spoke of a black god, it may not be an African. You can have a black god who is not an African. Tezcatli poker.
You see, black cannot, like the truth cannot always be used. Huh? Yeah, it's just black. Black is just a description. Why do you have to add a location to it? When you add Africa, you're adding location and locale. You're adding falsities. You were just dealing in truth. They saw a black man, period. James, Ivan, and then you want to call Tezakota's name. like Koto, you call him whatever you call him. But this is the problem. They don't want to believe that. They don't want to let it be. They don't want to let the truth be. The truth is you can have blackness without it being African. But they don't like that. They want to take blackness everywhere and make it an African. Let's hear this again. I'm sorry. Let's go back. Because he don't even like the term black. These is this Moorish mumbo jumbo. This is telling you how you can't even use. He's telling you he hate the term black. Why? Because it doesn't connect you to Africa. That's their whole thing. Not truth. We just want to know who were the people. Let's deal in truth.
As people in the Anglo-American and some of the Western nations who became colonial powers. Like in some languages in Europe, they use the term Niger, simply meaning black, without any of those connotations.
You see? They run around the world adding sauce. They run around the world adding African on black. You can't just be a black foot. You got to be an African foot. You know what I mean? Can't be no black foot. You an African.
Furthermore, the problem lay in that the word black could not always be used, because if you spoke of a black god, it may not be an African. You can have a black god who is not an African. Tezcatlipoca, for example, is a Native American god who is black, but he's not African. But there is a god, Nawalpili, who is both black and African.
I've never heard of this guy, and how will we know he's an African? How will we know he's an African? If we not dealing, if the Olmecs don't go to Africa. If the Olmecs don't go to Africa, you don't know they go to Africa. You don't reference any proof of them leaving. You say the Africans came here. But why does like, this is crazy.
Not only black in a ritual or symbolic sense, but he has Africoid features. So that was the problem I faced. And I had to make those connections, because when people talked of Nubians, they didn't often realize they were talking about black people.
Yep, they went around the world making everybody black. Egypto Nubio. This is all the same time. Do y'all see this? This is the same time. This is the same Pan-African movement. They've hijacked black, made everything black African. Knowingly. This was knowing. This is a clear agent job. They knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Let's go back to the second thing he said. That was the illest thing he said. He hate the term Negro. He hate the term Negro. That's crazy.
Negro Nubian, Negro Egyptian. Why?
Well, that in some ways is unfortunate. I found it necessary to use the word Negro. I no longer use it. I'm now the editor of the Journal of African Civilizations, and I use the word Africoid.
You see that? He no longer uses the term, right? He no longer, right? He just stopped. He just stopped. He gonna put everybody on a continent. He used to. He got in a game with the hijack. He got you on it by sprinkling some sugar on it. They calling them Negroes, right? They Negroes. They not Africans. You know what I'm saying? But he want everybody to be African because he's the editor of the journal. Do y'all hear how they change you? It's unfortunate. They don't like the truth. Pan Africans love everything but the truth. If it don't fit they African narrative, they gonna change it.
In some ways is unfortunate. I found it necessary to use the word Negro. I no longer use it. I'm now the editor of the Journal of African Civilizations, and I use the word Africoid for African types, skulls, etc. The reason why I was forced to use
That's it, guys. I mean, wow. If there's no scientific explanation, he just changed his mind. He wanted to use his. You see what I'm saying? See, that nigga ain't got no scientific explanation for why he did it. He says, I was forced to use the word. You forced to deal in truth. You forced to call a nigga a nigga. You want to make him an African. This shit go crazy. Let's go in the second part. This shit go
What if you
crazy.
could upload one mini AI written?
It's going crazy. The African came to America. I wonder what happened next.
Good evening and welcome to the second part of our interview with Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, anthropologist and historian and author of They Came Before Columbus. Dr. Van Sertima, in part one, we talked about how Africans came to the New World. Can we continue along this line, please?
Yes, I was speaking about the type of currents that take Africans into the New World. Now, I lived in South America. I was born in South America on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. And every year, in fact, I realized that when I was a boy of 10, that the many things would come in on the currents along the Atlantic. And some of the things that I found came from Africa. Scientists have found, botanists have found, for example, that the bottle gourd, which is African, can float by itself to America.
The bottle gourd?
The bottle gourd, yes. It's known in botany as Laginarius caesarea. Now, several things come out of Africa, not just men and ships. So that a man, once you enter that current, once you enter one of those currents, you automatically come to America. In fact, that is the way South America was rediscovered by Europeans. Alvarez Cabral, the Portuguese explorer, was going along Africa. Winds came up and blew his ships to South America. It is so close, really. So that this was a kind of journey that it could have been made thousands of years ago. There is no difficulty about the journey. The reason why people thought it was impossible is because it involved Africans. And since Africans were thought to be the lowest human being, nobody could think they had the capacities or the abilities. That is the reason why I am not only concerned with establishing this kind of contact and this kind of influence on American civilization, but showing what were the true potentials of Africans before the conquest. Now, not only do you have these currents, but you have evidence of boats. You have boats that take you. The Africans had been developing boats in the Niger. They'd been developing boats on the Mediterranean. Now people have added. But if you study the period in which these heads are found, in which the African presence is found for the first time in America, you will find there was a war on. This ship was used before Christ. This was built in
When was this particular
1969.
ship built?
My bad, they going crazy with the OTO. Let's see if we can freak it one time. My bad, they going crazy with the OTO. Let's see if we can freak it one time. Hmm. Johnson. Nah, nah. I guess they on their joint. They mad. They don't want the truth out. I'm just saying. I'm trying to be a little critical of it. I guess I was lit. I probably, I was being too nice to it. Being too nice to it. But hey, being too nice to it. So let me see. I wasn't gonna let it stay on YouTube though. Uh-huh. Oh, shout out to Jesse on YouTube. Let me reset, yo. I'll be right back. Trying so hard to make it. Yeah, yeah. You never know. Yeah, yeah. You never know. See? Alright, they gonna try it one more again. If they don't go, then we just gonna shit on them again. Shout out to Just See. I dropped the link on Facebook. See what we got.
when the Assyrian Sennacherib was attacking. And you have the blacks also saving not only the Jews, the blacks protected the Phoenicians, the blacks fought not only the Jews, blacks protected the Phoenicians,
Yeah.
the blacks fought.
Alright, we got a little motion, but dig though. You see how he go black when he wanna go black? He ain't saying Africans. Like these niggas be picking and choosing, bro. They be black when they wanna be black, and then they African like you know they trying to steal.
Against the Syrians and pushed them and kept them at bay for a long time until eventually the Assyrians invaded Egypt and pushed the blacks back in the south. And there was a north to south movement for quite a while, lots of battles going on. But because of this war, a lot of shipping traffic would push west down the Mediterranean towards the North Atlantic. And because the Phoenicians and blacks had something going called Carthadas, later to be called Carthage, in the North Atlantic, they began moving their ships down, getting metals which were so critical in the war.
The Phoenicians and the blacks. This nigga sound racist as a motherfucker until he talking about Africans. You know what I mean? Like, what's the difference between blacks and Africans when you say it? Is it we know the difference when you stealing it from America, but why you gotta keep, you know what I mean? Why you make the difference between blacks and Africans? You see that? That's why he gotta say Egypto-Nubian. Because they want to take the dark-skinned people and associate that. Like they just can't just play with history. They can't just deal in truth. They gotta play a color game on everything.
They were getting these things, copper and to make bronze, copper, and tin. And they have evidence of Phoenician ships in the North Atlantic as early as this period. So an accident could have occurred. The ships did not intend to come to America, but they were well equipped to go on other journeys in the North Atlantic. An accident occurred that drove them into mid-Atlantic, and then they moved along those currents into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, because you know why? Africans is the dumbest niggas on the planet. I mean, come on now, they built pyramids, but they did it by accident. They went to America by accident. Oh, and they came here and they built pyramids and they built bean corns and squash and they grew tobacco. They were smoking kush and they never took none of it back. Them niggas was sniffing coke and they never, you know what I mean? Like what they do? They got cocaine mummies. That's what they got. They lying ass. Like the great African civilization got lost. The great African civilization ain't good for nothing. Once was a trip, but a sailor in a sailing sea. Like these niggas is Gilligan, you know what I mean? Like this nigga just made 3,000-year Egyptian history into Gilligan. Yeah, it was once was a tiny sailor ship, and it was offshore. And it was the movie star, the millionaire and his wife. What type of weirdo is this? This is where y'all get all y'all Pan-African talking points from this guy. From dumb Egyptians that got blown off course.
An accident occurred that drove them into mid-Atlantic, and then they moved along those currents into the Gulf of Mexico.
We have a lot of other areas to cover, but what are some of the other evidences of African contact with America that you draw from inferences?
Well, influences, the influence of Africans.
Inferences.
Yes.
Okay.
You have, for example, they have found an American cotton. I don't want to go into the complexities of it, but I have spent a whole chapter on that, where you show that American cotton, which has 26 chromosomes, 13 of the chromosomes are African, showing a marriage occurred between an American wild cotton and an African diploid cotton. Botany. Linguistic. They found many African words in the languages of some of the South American people and some of the Middle American people. Leo Weiner, a Harvard linguist in the 1920s, established that. Metallurgy. They found that they found that Native Americans in parts of the Caribbean were using African spears, metals which were forged by Africans, which were not in the Caribbean, which were never made by Native Americans. This was established by Columbus himself in Spain. Assayers showed that these were African spears. The mixture of alloys were African.
Test our trading bot for 30 days, and if you're not satisfied with the growth, you get a full refund, no question.
In the area,
like, I mean, why would they need African gold? And there's more gold in America than anywhere in Africa. Like Fort Knox, like, you know, there's gold in the streams. Like, we find gold in the river. You ever heard of somebody else panhandling? Like, seriously, y'all know what panhandling is? Not the dude on the corner begging for money. No, that's the dude at the river with a bucket and a string. He's sitting on the river in a bucket, and he just let the water flow through the strain, and at the end of that strain is going to be some gold. That's what the Indians knew. Why we gotta go to Africa to stand by the river and collect the gold? Huh? Like, he just be making up stuff. They don't have no history
of engineering. They found certain, like for example, in the Olmec period, they found the ritual orientation of certain buildings and the kind of architecture that was involved and the kind of techniques that were involved were identical. The use of the same heavy transport techniques, the same methods of moving the vast stones, the same method of quarrying. You found evidences like that. And what is most astonishing is that the very place where I'm talking about, where you find these heads and the skeletons and the clay portraits, they found an African script. Now that is the most astonishing thing, because most people do not even know that the Africans have several scripts.
They
know
don't.
of the Egyptian, they know of the Meroitic,
They don't.
but they're not aware that Africa actually produced several scripts.
And this is the evidence. That's what I'm saying. He ain't got no evidence in his book. He ain't no evidence nowhere else. The Mayans don't need y'all script. They got their own script. It's written all over their face. Their face is the language. It's written on your face. You ever heard that expression? Because you get it from the Olmec. You get it from the Mayan. Written all over your face.
The Mande script or Manding script, nothing to do with the later Mandingo, was found at La Venta.
Do you have an example of that here?
I don't have an example of that here, but I want to show you a more recent example, something which I myself found, which was translated by Harvard and by the Libyan Department of Antiquities in North Africa. Now look at this carefully.
He said he found it himself. Okay, guys, let's go.
Okay.
It's difficult to see the whole of it, but perhaps you can pan across it so that you could see the whole of it. Now this, note that there's an Arabic reading at the bottom. It runs right across a pool. Now you can actually go and see this. You can actually go to United States Virgin Islands, St. John, the Reef Bay Valley, and on a dry day, when the water does not cover it, you can look along the water line and you will see those markings. Now, since 1888, about 100 years ago, anthropologists and archaeologists have been going to that spot, and they were looking above it at various markings which they could not understand. But when I got there, I noticed there were dots and crescents. You see those things at the edges? Away from the sort of spiral figures on the head and so on. The little dots and crescents.
Right.
Now, there are peculiar formations that are extremely regular. And I was given permission by the Virgin Islands government to, I put my finger in there for 2 days, got the exact sort of depressions, took away the incrustations in the moss, put chalk in them, and they were photographed. Mm-hmm. And then they were taken to Barry Fell at Harvard, and the Libyan Department of Antiquities established that this is the Tifinagh branch of a Libyan script, and that this was used before Columbus. Some of it was even used before Islam. Mm-hmm. It was used before Columbus, and it has been given a translation. It's right above a pool, and It has a specific translation
What
which
is
was
that
given.
translation?
It is plunging to cleanse and dissolve away impurity. This is water for ritual ablution before devotion.
You're saying that that's what that says?
That is what that says. And they have shown this script.
That's what that says. And he said, "That's what that said." What?
This is water for ritual ablution before devotion.
You're saying that that's what that says?
That is what that says. And they have shown this script. It's not something you can deny. It's not something that you can confute, because they have shown the markings, these dot and crescent formations. They have established it to be a script in North Africa. It was used before Columbus. It was used by people in southern Libya. It was used by blacks in the Sudan. It was used by the Tamahak Berbers in Mali. It was used by a 13th century cliff-dwelling people in Mali. All of these various black and mixed peoples made use of that script.
Now, why didn't he mention the Mayan script? You see what I'm saying? He talking about dot, curve. The Mayans ain't got no scripts. How do you know about these heads if you ain't reading about it? This nigga crazy. It's a hijack. He gonna give you a Libyan script. What them dot curves got to do with Americans?
And so you have evidences like these.
What about mummification?
Well, mummification was found in South America. Now, that map which we showed you at the beginning, that map which has a sort of basin that leads down into South America, that shows you that in America, and we are very confused about the word America, because when we think of America, we think of a very little place, the United States. That's only about a quarter of the American continent. America is one continent. It's only at the beginning of the 19th century that they cut a little canal between the two Americas. You have connections between those two continents. They've found, for example, the Olmec culture I talk about links up with Chavin culture in South America. And in South America, they have found Egyptian influences.
Where would the Olmec culture be today, the Olmec area?
That is the Gulf of Mexico. You can go to Levante. All you will see there now is the pyramid. You'll see almost nothing else. All these heads have been carted away. They're in museums, Museum of Anthropology in Mexico. One of them is in Washington. They're all over the place. To come back to mummification,
right,
because one is so overwhelmed by the facts that one has gathered about this over the years. But mummification, they found very clear evidence of this in South America. The exact formula, which nobody else in the world knew or could repeat. Exact Egyptian formula. Professor Rueta found that the same substances in the same combination, the same formula was being used in South America to mummify some of their things. Now, this was not found so easily in Olmec, Mexico, because the area at Levante is so swampy that the humidity is so corrosive that these things did not survive. But they found it in the sculptures. They found Egyptian-type sculptures with the shroud, with the type of headdress, with the arms crossing like this, with the fingers open. They opened the fingers so that the dead could not grab onto their souls. This was a sort of myth or ritual, and you find this repeated in the Olmec world. Quite a number of rituals, in fact, that were Egyptian you find in the Olmec world. The double crown, rituals of the kings, the use of purple as an index of royalty.
In the book you talk about a finding by the University of Oklahoma, I think it is. Mm-hmm. What about
the double crown from America, the use of purple for royalty from America? Like, bro.
that?
Yes, in 1963, the University of Oklahoma discovered that one of the Egyptian mummies, Princess Mini, was so well preserved that you could take some of the cells thousands of years after, you could take some of the cells and transplant it in a body, and it would still be able to be operative. That is, it is almost as if you had, like in the sorts of things they do today where they take out kidneys, etc. Some of the cells were so well preserved, it's almost as if they had lived in a block of ice, as it were, that they could be transplanted into a body.
What about the influence of the African calendar on the New World calendar?
Well, that is very complex because the New World had several calendars and the Egyptians had several calendars, but one of them contained identical symbols that, and also a body of things that indicated that it was Egyptian. I don't remember the details because it's some years since I wrote the book, but the calendars are complex because you have so many types of calendars, but one of them, as Abe Harvas has established, one of them was identical with the Egyptian and indicated an influence.
You talked earlier about...
I don't know which
Are
one.
you a STEM professional and are looking to apply for U.S.
Don't
permanent
know
residency?
which one. It's been so long since I wrote the book, the bullshit. I mean, the book. It's been so long, but one. What's the name?
Nubia. What was the relationship between Egypt and Nubia?
Well, the thing that you have to understand about that, you have to understand the early beginnings of Egypt. It has now been established that Egypt, in its first 1,000 years at least, was almost completely and totally Black African. Those were the critical years. Those are the years in which the pyramids were built. Those are the years of high science in Egypt. Those were the years in which the political, the administrative, the scientific structures were laid down. Now, in later periods, because Egypt had 3,000 years of history, no people have ever had such a long history. All civilizations come to an end. And in a later period, when you have invasions and you have other peoples coming in, the whole thing becomes mixed up. And you have to study the periods closely to know which is the African element and which is not. But in the critical years of the civilization, the African influence is dominant and overwhelming.
Okay. You have an example here, I think, of mathematics developed by Africans, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
I think
now that
I think we're getting a shot of it. Okay.
Now that, if you could lift it slightly to go along the sort of bone, that's a bone that was found in the Congo. It's known as the Ishango bone.
Shango.
And if you go further across, you will see it in a diagram indicating the first use of numbers in the world. That is 8,000 years old. That is the beginning of mathematics in Africa and the beginning of mathematics in the world. You see later in Egypt.
A bone, my nigga. A bone. A bone is the beginning of mathematics. Okay.
Egypt, other developments during the African-dominated period. Now, you see, it is this, and I must stress this again and again. We have a very, very poor idea of the African, both blacks and whites, because blacks are just as influenced by the propaganda of history as any other people. We have such a poor impression of the African because all of the studies of Africa have focused upon little people, people scratching the soil, people being worried by plague and disease and starvation, that we think that
little people. We don't hear about the African little people, the pygmies no more and shit. We just hear the giants. That's crazy.
That is the African. That's a small part of the African. Even in roots, the same sort of myth emerges. You see this little Kunta Kinte coming out of some idyllic little village on the Gambia. That's just a small part of the African. There are other rooms to the African. The African embraced other civilizations. Now they're discovering a whole range of complexity in the African.
Well, let me ask you this. Why is this information just coming out, or is it just coming out?
It is only just coming out for two reasons. The one reason that that shouldn't arouse much passion is the fact that only the archaeologists are only now catching up. You see, archaeology is fairly new. Serious archaeology is fairly new. Carbon-14 was not used until 1946. And Africa has been such a fragmented and shattered continent through the invasions and the disruption.
I mean, this was supposed to be about America, and he keep talking about Africa, Africa, Africa. This is why we don't know nothing about Africa. I mean, about America. This man is supposed to be telling you about the wonders of America and the African influence in America. And he just telling you about carbon dating and black Nubians.
And the conquest, that you can't go and pick up books from libraries and say, well, this is African history. So most people who go out to Africa, they start for the simplest and easiest thing to study. They find a tribe with 25 people or 100 people. It's very easy. It's not a complex society. So you get the impression that that's what Africa is about, simple people. And then they split up Africa, and then eventually there are wars among people who shouldn't be in a certain kind of structure that they have made for them. And they said, you see, the African is chaotic. He's never accustomed to great government. So one reason is archaeology. The other reason, obviously, is cultural racism.
If you're seeing this video, it's your sign that you have a message
racism
inside you that is meant to reach.
Blame everybody but the niggas that can't work together. I understand. He called it cultural racism.
After the African was turned into slave, it was absolutely important to make one's conscience, the conscience of the European, had to be assuaged. They had to say to themselves, well, look, I have a right to make this man into a slave because he is primitive. He's not as good as I am. I have to look after him, poor fellow. He's just a child in the world. As Albert Schweitzer said, the African is my brother, but he's my younger brother by several centuries. That sort of insult was thrown at the African people, and people had to believe that. Their books told them it was true. They didn't see the steel, they didn't see the astronomy, they didn't see the mathematics, they didn't see the engineering, they didn't see any of these things.
You mentioned astronomy just then. The last piece of illustration we want to deal with, I think, the star system.
Now look at this.
Okay.
And it's a pity that we can't get a whole picture, but this is the Dogon, a West African people, giving you a map, a chart of the orbit and trajectories of an invisible star. The Russians have recently discovered, they're extremely secretive. They have written me after I wrote, they came before Columbus. The New York Times made a big fuss of it. Russians wrote me from their academy asking me for some information. But when I wrote them back and asked them for other information, they wouldn't give it to me. But the Russians discovered recently that the Africans had telescopes in ancient times.
Brother Larry, I'm sure you're right. Why don't you hit the link and explain it to me, brother? I don't know why. Why don't you break it down? Hit the link right there, brother Larry. Explain it to me. I think you're right. I do complain. Why don't you set me straight? Hit the link.
Now that first one is the one on the left is African. The one on the right is what our satellites produced in the 20th century. They are identical. That's a white dwarf. It's invisible. Only with very skillful astronomy, complex astronomy, and the Africans did that 700 years ago, that you could work out this kind of thing. Do you know how they've tried to explain that? They've written, Kenneth Brecher, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, said the Africans have no business knowing any of this. And in England, Robert Temple's Royal Astronomical Observatory wrote a whole book, The Sirius Mystery, because this is Sirius B, the invisible star, the companion of Sirius A, stating that space people came down and gave the Africans that knowledge. So that is the way these things are being explained, because of the profound contempt for the African ancestors.
Well, let me just ask you this: what is it about the mind, the psyche of some white scholars that compels them to deny contributions?
Part of it is habit. I have found to my astonishment that
they speak in two different languages now. That's just for the smart people. I know I complain a lot. He about to hit the link. I know he got balls. He got big balls. He ain't afraid to tell me what he feel on his heart. he gonna hit the link. But they speak of two languages. The one guy talking about blacks, and this other guy talking about Africans. Nobody got a problem saying that the Olmecs was Negroes. Everybody got a problem saying that the Africans, because that ain't the truth. But go ahead, let's just play this one more time.
Compels them to deny contributions.
Part of it is habit. Part of it is habit. I have found to my astonishment that even black scholars behave like that. I was astonished, for example, after I pointed out, and I'm not going to call his name because I don't want to embarrass him. I pointed out to a famous African historian that he was wrong about Hannibal, that there were recent archaeological discoveries that he doesn't know about, showing that the Carthaginian civilization was largely African, even the aristocracy was largely African, that they have found that the so-called Punic figure or Phoenician figure, which was supposed to be dominant, there are very few elements of that, and they've checked it with skulls and skeletons in the Phoenician capitals, Tyre and Sidon, and they haven't found that type in Carthage easily. They found the Africoid type. And I said, look at this coin. It has Hannibal on one side and it has the elephant on the other, and it's a Negroid figure. Africoid, sorry. He says, well, you can't tell, it may be an elephant rider. It doesn't have to be Hannibal. But I said, look, these people never made coins of anyone but kings or people in great authority. They never made coins out of little people. How suddenly they're starting to make coins out of elephant riders when that is Hannibal's victory with the elephants? So both the archaeological evidence points to it, as well as the coin with Africoid types, and there's several coins with the Africoid types, not the Punic type, not the Phoenician type, and on the other side is the elephant struck in Carthage. And yet he would deny this. It's a habit of mind. It's an assumption built upon years of a certain historical propaganda that this man is really a man, a half-naked savage with bows and arrows going in the jungle. Africa has less jungle than any other continent comparable with its land space.
Thank you. Thank you. I be telling niggas that. I be trying to tell you that. What I said. And it be thousands of wildebeest running side by side. Should be open spaces. They ain't got no trees. You need trees to have a jungle. They ain't building no boats. They ain't building no houses. You need trees. Thank you. Thank you. See, he think he's saying something. He ain't saying the truth. People in the woodlands, if you live in the woodlands, you might got trees. You might got a boat. You might got a house. You live in the woods. I don't know.
Half-naked savage with bows and arrows going in the jungle. Africa has less jungle than any other continent comparable with its land space. There is almost no African kingdom or empire that was in the jungle. The Mali Empire had no jungle. The Egyptian empires, all of these things are not jungle empires. Even most of these great West African, the Ghana, Songhai, etc., very little of that was jungle.
So if we can summarize, if it is possible to summarize,
yes.
What do we know? What can we say briefly about Africans in early America?
What we could say is that there is evidence in many fields: botany, epigraphy, which is scripts, sculpture, linguistics, metallurgy. In many fields, there's evidence of an African presence in various historical periods. Some that came by accident, some came on purpose, as in the Mandingo journeys in the 14th century. We can show that in the very earliest period, that Africans not only came, because that is not important, because other people came here as well. They not only came, but they left a mark, an influence upon a significant and advanced civilization. And the other point I want to make, and I want to close on this, is that it is only because we have thought of the African as a primitive. And there are African primitives, there are European primitives. I've lived among European primitives. I've lived all over the world except Asia. And I've lived in villages in Europe, which today are more primitive than some villages in Africa still.
Why don't you hear about those?
Yeah, because people don't write, anthropologists don't go into European villages to write about European villages. Anthropologists like to go among so-called exotic peoples to study little tribal dances and little gestures and kinship systems. So to give the impression this is what the world was like at one stage among us. So if you want to know your beginnings, you have to go back to these simple peoples. We are the complex peoples and these are the simple peoples. The people without technology, well, that is the greatest fiction, that the Africans lack technology.
Our time is running out. You have undertaken a great task.
Time running out.
What is the point of it all?
The point of it all is to transform the black psyche. We have got to stop thinking of ourselves simply in terms of primitives and slaves. We have got to walk out of this small room of history, this small room in consciousness, into the larger house of man. That is the purpose.
Okay.
Spoken.
What?
Like
Our time is real short now. What made you?
Spoken like a true Mason. We gotta walk into the larger house. Leave the Negro behind. Leave your America behind. Your American is an Afro. Come into the larger house. Bring your Afro. Turn your natural into an Afro.
You write this book?
Well, that would take me a long time to answer, but I could sum it up by saying that I've always been haunted.
I mean, when did you decide that you were going to write this book?
I decided to write that in 1971. I began by writing against the thesis because I didn't believe in it. And when I finished writing against it, I discovered evidence that it was indeed a fact.
What kinds of obstacles have you run into in the process of writing They Came Before Columbus?
Well, there are certain discoveries that I came upon which I found great difficulty in pursuing, like the Smithsonian Institution, for example, who blocked the work I was doing in the Virgin Islands, where they found 2 African pre-Columbian skeletons.
Why did they block it?
They blocked it for reasons of their own. I was to discover later what those reasons are, but I'm not at liberty to talk about that.
Do you think that racism...
See, wait a minute. Wait a minute, y'all. What if the Smithsonian was right? What if they was trying to stop these niggas? Because these niggas trying to make everything African. And they know it ain't African, so they had to stop these niggas. And they didn't want to seem like racist. Because these niggas trying to make everybody African. And these ain't Africans. These is blacks.
Would be as rampant today if the world knew the true black man and black woman.
I think that one needs more than that. I think that peoples as a whole have to realize that no great civilizations came through any pure race.
Disrespectful ass niggas. He asked them a stupid question. He couldn't even give him a stupid answer. He gave him some bullshit. Listen to the question. That's not the question. He talking about mixed race. In America, we plural.
I was to discover later what those reasons are, but I'm not at liberty to talk about that.
Do you think that racism would be as rampant today if the world knew the true black man and black woman?
I think that one needs more than that. I think that peoples as a whole have to realize that no great civilizations came through any pure race, that people contributed to each other, that people owe a debt to each other. And that is the most important
And we owe
thing.
a heavy debt to you, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, author of They Came Before Columbus. The book is called They Came Before Columbus. That's our program. Good evening.
Why is Amazon paying me $20,000?
Or they doing donuts in the neighborhood. I had to mute the mic. It's getting crazy on the 4th of July. Oh yeah, we turned up in the hood. What's wrong, Larry? Are you okay over there, Larry? Larry hurting. Larry said he came 15,000 years ago. He walked to this country. Let's go look at who are you, Larry? Who are you, Larry? Huh? Larry, you walked here 15,000 years ago? You believe that story, Larry? Why do you believe that story? Why Larry believe that story? Let's look at Larry. Larry looked like he one of them angry black men and shit. This nigga angry. He one of them old angry black niggas and shit. Look at this. Damn. Larry don't smile at all and shit. Larry, you alright, Larry? You done missed your whole life, Larry. Larry, you don't smile at all. Larry went to Choctaw High School, y'all. Wait a minute, y'all. Larry went to Choctaw High School, y'all. Y'all see this? Larry went to Choctaw. He think he walked here and shit. Larry, you a Choctaw? Y'all see the fuckery I be dealing with lately, y'all. I got a lot of these weird type niggas, bro. These Oklahoma niggas, these Choctaw, these fake tribes. What you want, Larry? You walked here 15,000 years ago, and boy, are your legs tired, ass. The fuck? This nigga legs tired and shit. Look at this shit, y'all. Look at this nigga. He a Choctaw. Y'all see this shit? Larry, tell us about going to high school in Choctaw country. You on some crypto shit, Larry? He from Pushmataha, Alabama. Where is that? I've never heard of that. It's like 69 people in his town. They all follow him on his page. It's crazy. They got niggas. They got black country folk up in Pushmataha. They got Negroes. Negroes out in the country, in the middle of nowhere. Larry, you okay, Larry? You bored out there in nowhere? See, that's what I be saying, y'all. It be dumb niggas trying to hide this shit from y'all. This nigga on the border of Mississippi. Look at this nigga. This nigga, he a Mississippian. He on a border. He don't even gotta pay toll. He can walk. This nigga walk back and forth to Mississippi and shit. He a real country boy. Shout out to Larry. Old head Larry out from Pushmataha. He got far away from there. That nigga out in California now. But this nigga went to Choctaw High School. He said he walked here, y'all. Y'all hear this weird shit? Y'all be hearing these niggas and shit? This nigga said he walked here and shit. Like, this the shit I be having to deal with. Pan-African niggas and shit. You know what I mean? He a Pan-African, y'all. He trying to hide some shit. What's wrong with you, Larry? What you trying to hide? What you trying to hide, Larry? This shit crazy. This nigga said he walked here and shit. He walked here from Choctaw High School, ass nigga. Did you learn anything about... What did you learn in Choctaw High School? Like, this nigga a real Choctaw for Christ. Shout out to this nigga and shit. He a Choctaw for Christ ass nigga and shit. What you want, Larry? What you want on here, Larry? You a Choctaw for Christ? Race is man-made. This nigga, like, I don't know, bro. That's what I be saying. Like, the problem is the niggas that be saying they Indians. The niggas that think they Indians, they not Indians, bro. They always mad. They always upset. They ain't real Indians. Real Indians is on a pursuit of happiness. These motherfuckers mad. This nigga is 75 years old. Ain't never smiled a day in his life. What's wrong, Larry? This shit crazy. This nigga crazy. Anyway, getting back to advanced Sertima. Do y'all see how they try to make how he made this African thing American? It's crazy. I gotta let him this nigga go. Do y'all see how a nigga can make Africa into something that it's not? Like he didn't have nothing to talk about. He didn't have nothing to talk about, bro.
Of the period that the Assyrians started to move down the Asiatics, who were led by the great power.
Like they whole shit is to make the world African. This is where you get it from. This guy right here. Hit the link. Don't be scared. This your squad. Represent him and shit. I want to understand, why did he make everything black, everything African? He stole the American shit. He didn't even dig into it. Because he talking about language. Let's go over here right quick. I was gonna say the first book in America, but let's go to I want to find out what's the oldest book. We're gonna go back. We're gonna change that to the oldest book in America. Wow, look at this, the base Psalms book. You hear this bullshit? $16.40. That's what they want you to think. Let me put in Maya. Here we go. The Codex de Maya. This is the oldest book in the world. Let's see what's in it. In the oldest book in the world, you got black people. You got black faces. You know, in the oldest book in the world, right here. This is black faces, the oldest book written in the Americas, right here. You got black faces. It's all black faces in the oldest book written. And there's a language here. This is numbers. This is 1, 2, 3, and a 5. So this is an 8. You dig? Like, the oldest book in America, right? And this is the tree of life. He's sitting here having a conversation with the tree of life. But this is a guy that's derived from the tree of life. Because you see, he has a piece of it. Now, this tree of life is DNA. Did you know that? Did you know that the tree of life is about DNA? Y'all didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, the tree of life is about DNA. See, all this is American history. It's not that fugazi. Like, we got the oldest book in the world. You know what I'm saying? With scripts. You see the scripts. You see the language. You see the letters commemorating the date. But you have to understand that everybody knows what this tree is. This is the tree of life. Everybody knows. You know what I'm saying? And what is it written on? Is it written on paper? Stop. Oh gosh. It's a book on paper. what do they say? The book consists of 10 pages. Yes, sir. 10 painted pages. So you got to go back thousands of years before the Colombians, like this is 13th century, but way before 13th century is the 1200s at least. Is the 1200s at least, right? So I just need y'all to stop playing with me, if you could be so kind. Because again, the poor guy, like he got a problem. He said he had to. He said you can be black, right? But you don't have to be. You can be black, but you don't have to be African. His job was to make you African, right? He talked about um Quetzalcoatl, right? And they call him Tezcatlipoca, right? He's saying, yeah, he's a black guy, but he ain't no African. You know what I mean? Like he set us back so far because he gotta take a guy and make him. He gotta take the truth and add some bullshit to it. You got a black guy that's not an African and he knows it. How many of your Africans can handle the truth? Hit the link and get baptized. You got an African guy that ain't African. Ain't that crazy? They don't know how to deal with it. The man said he couldn't take it. He had to go back and change it. Huh? That's crazy. Think about that shit. The nigga said he had to go back and change it because the nigga was black from head to toe, but he wasn't from Africa. They respected him, they worshipped him, but he wasn't from Africa.
Implications which it has here. They use this term to separate Africoid types of people from Caucasoids or Mongoloid type.
No, they use this term to separate Africans from Americans. Because the American is only found in the Americas. You know what I mean? The Indian or the American is only found in the Americas. They want to come back and mix the dope. He ain't got nothing else better to do. He admitted he did it on his own.
Asiatic and European types. Also, it is a word that has entered neutrally.
That's what we fighting for in 2024. Enter neutrally. Stop putting connotations on this shit. Stop making everything black or African. It used to be a word that was entered neutrally. What? This nigga said he walked here 15,000 years ago. He believed in this Van Sertima nigga because the word was neutral. You know what I'm saying? The word was neutral. The word was truth. You can't be upset about truth. It wasn't polarizing. Now it's polarizing. He don't want the word to be neutral. He don't want the word to be true. He want the word to be African. This lying ass nigga. What's wrong with him?
Types of people from Caucasoids or Mongoloid types, Asiatic and European types. Also, it is a word that has entered neutrally without any social significance in the languages of many people who do not have the same kind of prejudices as people in the Anglo-American and some of the Western nations who became colonial powers. Like in some languages in Europe, they use the term Niger, simply meaning black, without any of those connotations. Furthermore,
without any connotations, without any, I mean, like This is a man, he being honest. He being honest. Why is he being honest? Because it's the truth. Why is he being honest? Because it's the truth. You do, like they creating our problems. These scientists, these museum ass Negroes, they don't want to be Negro. They want to have implications from some flea foot ass niggas, from some niggas that ain't gonna fight for us. When they just could have just left it alone. He just could have just kept it true. It didn't have no implications. It separated the fake from the real. Everything was fine. Everything was true. It was neutral. Now we sitting here, we gotta be the bad guy. Now we gotta be evil. We gotta hate ourselves because he can admit that the shit was neutral. Because it didn't have negative connotations. Because nobody was adding on no racism and no extra shit. He said in some and it just meant black. That's all we want to be, baby. Leave me alone. I don't want to be from Africa. I just want to have my complexion. I want to represent that I'm not them. Is that okay? Is that okay?
Europe, they use the term Niger, simply meaning black, without any of those connotations.
Without any of those connotations. See, they added all the hype on the shit. They added all the emotion to it. They added all the pressure and all that confusion and shit just to make us black, just so they can prove to they fucking scientists, to they laureate brothers and they alumni friends that they smart. They manipulated us. Simple words, and they added connotations, negative connotations. We out here fighting for shit that we ain't had nothing to do with. Cause this nigga wanted to be the editor of an African magazine.
Furthermore, the problem lay in that the word black could not always be used because if you spoke of a black,
the problem lies because shit,
God, it may not be an African. You can have a black God who is not an African.
And we got one. What's wrong with these niggas? What's wrong with these niggas? Can somebody stop these niggas, please? We have a black guy that's not an African, y'all. We have a black guy that's not an African, y'all. I ain't gonna lie to you, we do. We got a couple black guys that's not an African. You know what I mean? Everybody know one of my favorites. I'm Kezi Koto in the flesh. Big facts. But we got a goddess, right? Let's look at her, right? Isha. She is black. She not African. Look at this baddie. Look at this baddie looking at her nails. She's not bothered about the boob tube. She got her hair did. She got her nails done. You know what I mean? She dropping it like it's hot. Like, y'all hate it. She got the sundress on looking a piece. And she not African. She's black. Yeah, she's black. She might have pinked her face. But look at her hands. Look at her feet. It's a black woman right here. Look at her body. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't need y'all to add negative connotations, bro. Y'all Africans got to grow up. Y'all Africans got to grow up. Like, it's a new world.
Term Niger, simply meaning black, without any of those connotations. Furthermore, The problem lay in that the word black could not always be used, because if you spoke of a black god, it may not be an African. You can have a black god who is not an African. Tezcatlipoca, for example, is a Native American god who is black, but he's not African. But there is a god, Nawalpili, who is both black and African. He's not only black in a ritual or symbolic sense, but he has Africoid features. So that was the problem I faced.
But do you know how dope that is? Let's go. I mean, do you know how dope that is? Do you know how dope that is? How do you know that you have a black god that's not African? That's why I be telling y'all, it's truth and a lie. A nigga that know a lie, he know the truth. Cause he has to make sure that he's not saying the truth. He gonna give a little bit of it. But he gotta keep the truth. So he know the truth. Cause if he told you the truth, it wouldn't be a lie. So he's lying intentionally. He gotta give you a little bit of the truth. You can have a black God who is not an African. Understand that. How deep that is. So you got a whole group of people, black people, worshiping black gods, and they're not African. That's what he's saying. Who has a black god? Who was worshiping Quetzalcoatl? The Olmecs, the Mayans, the black folks. The Aztecs, yeah, that's later. And they lightened them up. So you got the black god being worshipped by black people who is not African, and he is upset. This is the problem. This is the problem. This is the lie. He knows the truth. He knows that there can be a black God. There can be black people worshiping a black God. They're all not African. The God's not African. But we need a God with some African twang, with some juju.
Black god who is not an African. Tezcatlipoca, for example, is a Native American god who is black, but he's not African.
This the game is over for y'all niggas. I don't want to be like this. I'm talking about cognitive dissonance. Like, I mean, people like to call me dumb. You dumb. You slow. You slow. I'm slow. This nigga just said this is a black guy that's not an African, and y'all in the comments section are arguing that everybody black is an African. No, you were lied to. You were hijacked. He purposely tricked you. He purposely stopped using the word Negro and started using the word African to sell more papers. Yeah, he's an editor. Like, this is a scam. This is a hustle. No one ever got to hear him tell you that, hey, man, this is my play. I'm running a play. This is a play, goddammit. He ain't no African. He black. He's a black American, the Native Americans, right? See, that's the only time he ever talked about Native Americans. You know what I mean? When he trying to throw you off. The Native Americans got a black...
May not be an African. You can have a black god who is not an African. Tezcatlipoca, for example, is a Native American god who is black, but
how did the... Let's just play that game then. Like I like to tell niggas, okay, you're right. You're right. Okay, you're right. So the Native Americans got black people? They seen black people, right? So if the Native Americans ain't black, because that's what he's insinuating. He's not saying that. He showed the pictures of the Mayans that were black. He showed the pictures of the heads of the Aztec that was black. But he's saying the Native Americans like they never seen a black person before. Like the Native Americans is all these niggas like cuz they came here over the land bridge 15,000 years ago. So if they never seen a black person, why the fuck they got a black person as a god, bro? Why they got multiple black people as God? See, like they killed theyself. Y'all lucky I wasn't around then, boy. Y'all niggas lucky I wasn't around. This shit wouldn't have got no steam. I wouldn't have had no traction. Cause you killing yourself with common sense. I ain't, you got a bunch of people that never seen an African, never seen these Egyptians, but they know black and they know black people. They know a black guy. Like they know black people enough to make a black nigga a god. Like stop it, bro. I gotta stop it with this weird ass reaching. I gotta stop it with this weird reaching. Y'all not them. Y'all not them guys, man. I gotta understand. That's why that shit crumbled. Y'all looking for weird niggas like this who just looking to be somebody. Looking to be somebody. He not him. Poor Van Sertima. Never got the bubble and shit. You know what I mean? Never got the blow. Never got the burst. This nigga. This shit sad.
He's not African. But there is a God.
But there is a like, come on, bro. Let's not deal with but there is. Like when they say but there is, they taking all the regular people, all the slow-minded people, and they stealing them. They stealing them because he's saying, but don't worry, I got something for you. I got something that'll appease your sweet tooth. I got something right here that will get the junkie in you satisfied. Like, come on, you like that exotic shit. I know you. You like that exotic shit. Stop playing. You an alien. You want to hear about, you know what I mean? Jesus on the main line. Come on. I got something for you. There is a black God. He's an African. Let's talk about him. You know what I mean? That's purty. That's cute. Real cute ass nigga shit. Slide right over this shit. You know what I mean? Oh yeah. You came for that. You wanted to buy that car, but I don't have that car. I do got this motorcycle, but it's not really a motorcycle because it's like a pedal. You gotta pedal with your feet, but if you push it with your feet, you know. And I put this bottle on the tire. It's like a hug bottle. You get it for $1. I'll buy it. I'm gonna drink it though, and I'm gonna give it to you. It's gonna be $1. You're gonna put it on the tire, and it's gonna go. It's gonna sound like a motorcycle. It's gonna be an African. It's gonna be an African. Don't worry about a real motorcycle.
Now Alpili, who is both black and African, he's not only black in a ritual or symbolic sense, but he has Africoid features. So that was the problem I faced.
And again, this is the disrespect. All of this is assumption. He's assuming that the people that drew this knew an African and knew African features. And they knew African features different from black Negroid features. Why would they know separate features? Why would they make this feature of an African and this feature of a Negro? If they knew dark-skinned people, wouldn't they know where they come from? And wouldn't they make them all the same? Why would they differentiate unless there's a difference? And they will be side by side. Like, come on, you don't do 1,000 years difference, nigga. Stop it. This little short ass arm nigga trying to box with God. Stop it. Sort of problem that I faced. Let's hear this nigga lie.
And I had to make those connections. And African. He's not only black in a ritual or symbolic sense, but he has Africoid features.
I mean, how do we know these African features? If I'm drawing a nigga, I'm from America, I'm drawing a god. But this particular guy got African features and the other nigga, he don't. He just black. Do y'all see that shit? Like, the people stupid. The people drew an African on purpose, but drew Quetzalcoatl black by accident. Like, we know this nigga features. Yeah, he got black features. He got African features, pardon me. This other nigga, he don't. He just black. Like that's what they trying to tell y'all without telling y'all that. Like they think y'all stupid. They think y'all stupid. So the problem I faced.
So that was the problem I faced. And I had to make those connections because when people talked of Nubians, they didn't often realize they were talking about black people.
So now when they talk about Nubians, they talk about black people. They're not talking about Africans no more. When they get the Africans, it's when they get specific. See the sucker shit? Pardon my French. I'm sorry. It's getting late. Put the kids to bed. But y'all see that when they get to Africa, then they start trying to get specific. When you get to an African, you gotta get specific. When you wasn't in Africa, it was just, But now you got the Nubians. I got to be black. You got to be a black Nubian. You got to be a black Egyptian. You got to be a sub-Saharan African. A what? You know what I mean? Like they want you to be black. This light skinned nigga. This mulatto. This pass the brown paper bag test ass nigga. He wants you to be darker than him. He wants you to be blacker than blacker than blacker than him in order for it to be authentic. Like he looked like a modern day Egyptian. Why won't he just, get him some slide? Do y'all see this shit? He want him to be blacker than his gums. Blacker than Forrest Whitaker gums.
In the first few pages of They Came Before Columbus, you write about when Columbus himself heard about about Africans, the possibility of Africans having been here years before.
Like, yeah, man, this is the one dude that did it all, bro. We love this man. Because we don't have the prejudice.
Not have the same kind of prejudices as people in the Anglo-American and some of the Western nations who became colonial powers. Like in some...
Like they added us into that African shit. All the negative stuff that they thought about Africans, they added us into it. All the truth about Africans being short dwarfs that can fit into a cave. Ogun being a cave god. The Oshruns and the Orishas all being cave deities. No, he gonna throw us in there. He don't want to be Negroes no more because Negroes don't make you Africans. He don't want to be black because black don't give you no connotations. He wants you to have a connotation. Like what nigga wants you to be thought of in a negative light? These ain't y'all friends.
Languages in Europe, they use the term Niger, simply meaning black, without any of those connotations. Furthermore,
I don't want no connotations, nigga. That's the fucking problem. That's the goddamn problem. All these connotations. Motherfucking African mad at me because I'm trying to get off these connotations and shit. I don't have no problem with you doing on your or what you not doing on your continent, what you not doing in your tribe. I just don't want no connotations. Don't put me into that shit. I don't want to be we are the world. Like I remember that. Remember I used to tell you all that shit. Now everybody's saying that shit, but yeah, he is the we are the world nigga. John Henry Clark, they the we are the world niggas. They want connotations. They can't deal with truth. Oh Lord, I hate these niggas. I hate these niggas. Boy, please. These niggas can't deal in truth. He wanted to add a negative connotation to a black guy. He don't believe the Native Americans seen black people. Oh, he believed that they got like come on now. They got an African feature on a god. Where they find these niggas at, bro? I just be wondering. Because it seemed to me like it's dangerous. let's go back right quick. Like that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I could easily beat these niggas because you never pay homage to the goddess. Like I remember when I came out and I showed niggas like everybody's still Isha. Isha's the bomb, and I let it go because they don't even know how powerful she is. But she represents the baddie. She's the baddie. Look at this sundress. Look at her weave, if you want to say it's a weave. But she got what you would think of as like a Chinese style, my nigga. I know that the niggas like we the chi, right? She got a chi style. Shout out to Isha. And I peeped her looking at her nails. You know what I mean? So to me, this was so American. Short dress, fat butt, big old butt. Look at the big old butt. Short dress, big butt, bougie. You know what I mean? Did face beat. You know what I'm saying? Like she looked like a modern black girl. That's why I knew niggas like I was scared of her. Cause y'all I'm like, y'all ain't gonna get her. She's so bad. But these niggas never talk about her. And she's sitting here with the tree of life. This is the tree of life. This is the tree of life. This thing that she's sitting here with. And this rabbit is eating from the tree of life. You know what I'm saying? I showed y'all going back to the first codex. In the first codex, they talking about the tree of life. You know what I'm saying? You got to have the knowledge of who is the God, who created what. You know what I'm saying? But like I say, this nigga, he taking from the tree of life. He eating off the shit. He got something in his hand. Do y'all see that? He got something in his hand. He's paying homage to the tree of life. This is like the Aztec. You know what I'm saying? This is the Aztec. But this is the, the mulatto Azteco. Man, I'm gonna keep it thou up. But Isha, she ain't got nothing in her fucking hand. What Isha got in her hand? Nothing. Cause she not getting nothing from the tree of life. She taking this rabbit and she feeding this rabbit from the tree of life. They try to cut that off. But she feeding the rabbit from the tree of life. And look at the rabbit. The rabbit got legs and some shorts. Like the rabbit, you know what I'm saying? Like the rabbit got legs. Look at how long these legs is. Look how long. Like this nigga is wearing clothes and some shorts. But y'all don't understand the tree of life. Y'all don't understand the baddest chick on the planet. And that all these faces is words. This is a language. All of these faces is words. It's written all over your face. Y'all don't see me sitting in the back with my dick out. You know what I mean? Like y'all don't see this nigga right here, Yom Kip. This is me right here. You know what I mean? Yom Kip right here in the corner. People think that's a smiley face. No, that's a nigga with that nigga. His dick so big, like, and it's brown. Look at that. Like, look how brown his slong is in the dirt. People don't know what that is. You think it's a person smiling and shit. Nah, that's Yum Keep. The bubble yum. The keeper of the yummy. She got that yummy. So you got Yum Keep. He behind her to make sure that, he get all up in that fat ass. See, I'm just saying, y'all ain't down with this shit. Y'all don't understand that this is one man that did all of this dumb shit. He had a problem with it. Ain't nobody else have a problem with it. He did. These is Pan-Africans. These is Egyptians. They wanted everybody to be African. Stole all the Africans. Like that nigga, when he stopped doing, like, you understand, bro? Like Van Sertima whole shit is we are Africans. You know what I'm saying? That's Van Sertima whole shit. His whole shit is we Africans. Somebody hit the link. Stop being scared, nigga. Yeah, that's that, man. Y'all niggas scared, man. Y'all talk all that tough talk. I want to see y'all Africans stand on some of this shit, man. Tell me, teach me. I want to learn. I just listened to everything he said. He ain't give me no dates. This nigga ain't give me no dates. He ain't showed no artifacts. He showed some written stuff on the wall. You know what I mean? He got y'all niggas brainwashed. We got some Choctaw County niggas up in here. That like that's the thing about it. Like niggas love this type of shit. Y'all want to be from Africa so bad. Y'all don't want to be the black guy. And we fighting it. I mean, y'all understand that this is what we fighting and shit. We fighting negative connotations. We fighting that black mean African. Like that's the dumbest shit in the world that you really gotta fight. Like black mean African. Why? Oh, Van Sertima did it. Dumbass. Admittedly did it. You know what I mean? Like, you ever see a nigga say, I get it. We all gotta do what we gotta do for our audience, right? And in our movement at the time. That's his movement. I ain't mad at him. He African. That's his whole shit. Like niggas say, I tell you, Marcus Garvey, all them niggas, they come here to steal our minds. We don't know these niggas. These motherfuckers grow up in fucking orphanages, programmed and shit, in boarding schools. They come here and they hate black people. You know what I mean? Like, why you hate black people? Because they not Africans. Like, what? Yeah. You can't just be black. Like, that's some shit that these niggas be on. You know what I mean? That's the shit. Like, they stole us. You have to understand that shit. They stole us. This nigga stole us. He mixed the dope for no fucking reason. Other than his own fucking his own prestige. His own prestige and shit. These niggas wanted more fucking props. So they took and he separated the term.
Types of people from Caucasoid with the social implications which it has here. They use this term to separate Africoid types of people from Caucasoids or Mongoloid types, Asiatic.
And what if it would have worked, bro? We'd be cool. But you put these weird ass Africans on a pedestal for no reason. And we ain't get nothing from it. You done included We Are the World. You done demoralized half the motherfucking American people. You done made us all slaves. And they didn't send us a care package. You know what I'm saying? They didn't send us a get well soon card. Like, what do we get from Africa? From you lying to us, from you taking our black God and making him African. What did we get from this shit? Like, this is crazy and shit. Like, let's play a game and shit. Like, you won't even find nothing else about this nigga. Nothing else about this. We're gonna type in his name, right? Everything else is African civilization. All right, here go one. Blacks, right? But then it's the Moors, it's Egypt science, Egypt revisited, the Moors, you know what I mean? Like this nigga, he really brought Africa to the world. You know what I'm saying? Like he brought Africa to the world with this African and American shit. And he don't have a problem being African, being Egyptian, being American, being a Moor. Like he is the nigga. This nigga right here. He is Levi Amaruchi Bay. That's what this nigga is. Sorry, cuz he stole your name. This nigga a Moor. He an Indian, and he a motherfucking African. All in one fucking lecture. Stop this bullshit, bro. How the Moors civilized Spain. I heard how they sold us out. That shit probably got more views than this shit. But we gonna play along.
Serious questions in the course, and that is, how could a European times that when the review was sent into the New York Times was amazed.
Hold on, this is one part here.
Or reflexes.
This is one part in this shit that he really like. They be doubling down. Let's go.
Conceptions of ourselves, the way people conceive of us, the way we treat ourselves, the way we are treated by others. History, therefore, has a lot to do with the living present. No man can be truly released from the past until he understands the past. And no.
So you see how that works? These niggas created a fake history to entrap us. They created a fake reality to entrap us.
Man can be released. The full potential of man for work.
No man can be released until we get out of this fake ass history. Until we stop making every black guy an African. Until we get away from the fucking everything being African and forget about the Negro. You start forgetting that the American or the Indian is only found in America, you're gonna be lost in the sauce like this nigga. Cause this nigga lost. And he know that history is the key to losing y'all niggas. He did this on purpose.
Released from the past until he understands the past. And no man can be released. The full potential of man for work in the living present that leads him into a new future cannot be activated until he has this very alert, alive, and discriminating relationship and connection with the past.
Indiscriminating. You see that? Indiscriminating. How many of y'all are ready to be discriminating with your history? Be discriminating with your knowledge and your information. Because that's what he on. He want to teach you history discrimination. You talking about race discrimination. It's historical discrimination. He don't like the truth. I'm telling you, nothing, a Pan-African don't hate nothing more than he hate the truth about America. He'll love you to death until you start talking about America and the greatness of America and the pyramids and before Egypt.
That is why we speak of these things today. I was particularly aware from the kinds of criticisms that fell upon me that we really, very few of us have any idea of what the Africans were involved with before slavery. All of us know, for example, the familiar story of slavery in the Americas, but few of us know what an enormous trauma, what a catastrophe struck Africa itself. So that thousands and thousands of books have been written about Africa and Africans that gives us not a clue of the complexity the potential, the capacity of Africans at the time they were struck down, at the time their continent was split and partitioned and colonized. It is only within the last few years that archaeologists have given us the
I don't say that. That ain't happening in America. That shit wasn't cut and split. You got history. Niggas knew how to read and write. They wrote everything down. You can trace every year. You don't have to miss a year in any state in America. So I don't know how they always try to conflate because the Africans don't got no history. They want to say we don't got no history. The Africans don't have no history, bro. You keep blaming colonialism for these niggas not doing shit. They could print their own money. Like, do you think people was printing money to get a mound built? You think people was printing money to get a pyramid built?
faintest glimpse of the lineaments of an African science, its technology. We discovered, for example, in 1978, two of our professors, Schmidt and Avery of Brown University, discovered Africans were smelting steel 1500 to 2000 years ago. In that time, there was the smelting of steel in the world, but nobody, no country, no people on earth achieved the extraordinary technological complexity of the Africans. The American team showed that the Africans were smelting steel, the finest bloom of carbon steel in the world, in an industrial site along the lakes in Tanzania, East Africa, that they were smelting it with temperatures of 1,850 degrees centigrade. No machine until the end of the 19th century ever achieved that temperature. The highest ever achieved in the world before the Africans was 1,620 degrees centigrade in a second century Roman blast furnace. And even when George Wilhelm Siemens, the German scientist, discovered a process for smelting steel on a mass scale, the European process in the mid-19th century was not as advanced as the African process at least 1,500 years earlier. Because the European process produced steel in two crude stages, the Africans did it in a single stage through the crystallization of iron, involving a semiconductor technology unknown until the 20th century. And they found further that the Africans were doing all this using less fuel. We usually assume Africa is full of jungles, great forests and woodlands, etc., and therefore they always had this forest reserve. The Africans were actually forced into fuel-saving technology in this industrial site very early. Because Africa, in fact, and I will repeat this until it sinks into your head.
And you did. But I just want to say one thing. It seemed like Africans is the most forgetful ass niggas. They some forgetful ass niggas. They had all of this shit and they just forgot everything. A nigga just was on his way to North Africa, ended up in America and forgot how to get home. Like, think about it. Y'all the most advanced niggas and y'all just forgot how to get back. Y'all made a mistake and came to America, but y'all forgot how to get back. Ain't that a bitch? Y'all had steel and y'all forgot how to make it. Y'all niggas had houses and cars and y'all forgot all that shit. Why ain't nobody ever forget nothing in America? Why when they come to America, that's when they find inventions? Food, clothing, and shelter. In America. Why ain't no African invention? Show me one African invention. They forgot everything.
Africa has less jungle than any other continent comparable with its land space. Africa has less jungle than any other continent comparable with its land space. If you were to take two Europes and put it in Africa, which you can, there is more woodland and forest in two Europes than in Africa, the comparable land space. I grew up in a jungle. I was born in the city of Georgetown, but I spent 14 years in deep jungle. And I'm not talking about little bush. I'm talking about real jungle. The the jungle you see in Raiders of the Lost Ark. The deep.
And do you know that America is a jungle? Like, do y'all know that Washington is a tropical rainforest? Oh yeah, that's why people in Seattle have the highest suicide rate because of the rain, right? Seattle has the most rain. It's always, what is it? Sleepless in Seattle, whatever, the raining shit. Yeah, it rains in Seattle. Seattle is an actual rainforest. The redwood trees and all. It's a rainforest. It's a tropical forest in America. That's where you get the first primates from. Montana. America had the best forests. So that's why I'm saying, like, a forest is a good thing. That's how you get housing, and that's how you get boats. You don't get housing and boats from Africa, the desert, from fucking savannah.
South American rainforests. And I don't know of any African who has spent that much time in the jungle. There is not a single high culture, not a single civilization in Africa that grew up in the jungle. Whether it is the Ethiopian civilization or the classical Egyptian civilization or the Tichit in North Africa or the Afro-Phoenician civilization of Carthage or Ghana, Mali, or Songhai in West Africa or Monomotapa, the seat of an empire in Southern Africa, not one. There are whole empires in Africa like medieval Mali, for example, which the Arabs said dwarfed the Holy Roman Empire, which contained as much space as all the states of Western Europe put together, and there was not a single slice of jungle in that empire. The Africans there traded with other Africans in the jungle, but they would not advance into the jungle. They were terrified of it. The reason why we have so many thousands of books on African jungle, apart from Tarzan, the reason why we have so many books on Africans where the Africans retreated as the Sahara dried up, peopling Ethiopia and then Egypt. I said that before the Earth satellite. I said that in my book 7 years ago. A few anthropologists said it based on linguistic evidence, the spread of linguistic networks coming out.
Like, I'm telling y'all, he just another nigga that used America to talk about Egypt. He just another nigga that used America to talk about we are the world and shit. Like, that's the thing. You have to understand. They don't have nothing over there. They want to put us all together in one pot.
Africans had at least half a dozen scripts before they were touched by Europe. They built the hieroglyphic script, and the oldest books in the world, of which we still have fragments in spite of massive destruction in the long span of time, the oldest medical texts and the oldest mathematical texts in the world are African. There is no doubt about it. Absolutely none. This is not speculative, romantic myth-making. These are the facts.
You know how this nigga sound like? He sound like me one time when I forgot where my girl lived at. You know, I had this girl. She was super bad. I liked everything about her. I really did. And I forgot where she lived. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's before like people had phones and shit like that, like cell phones. Like, for real, like, bro, how y'all niggas how y'all niggas have everything and then y'all just forget? How y'all forget everything? Y'all forget cotton, y'all forget corn, y'all forget beans and squash. You forget how to build a house. You forget how to build a boat. You forget how to get back. I mean, you forgot your calendar. You forgot what day it was. Like, y'all niggas is the absent-minded professor. Y'all Gilligan's Island. I mean, this shit is crazy. Nobody wants to be one of y'all. Because y'all don't even know who the fuck y'all is. Y'all forgot.
Through the air, a glider, 300 years before Christ. It is found at Saqqara. They are aware of the mathematics. People have said, even now that they're finding that as they go back into history, it becomes blacker and blacker. They say that the Egyptian arithmetic, the Egyptian geometry and so forth, which they took because they had their own arithmetic, they took geometry, they had their own arithmetic, but yet they found that Egyptian arithmetic more accurate. It didn't come from people just sitting down and saying, well, an inch is a It came from looking at the sky. Everything that they learned from that cosmos, they put it into their work. They were the first to create the 24-hour day. They were the first, the Africans in Egypt were the first to create the precise measurement of the year 365 and a quarter days. But whereas when it was taking over, we created a leap day every 4 years to deal with that quarter. The Africans created a true leap year every 1,460 years. And whereas we take that leap day, and
from 25 tons.
What is the relationship between this?
We're going to skip a little bit. Because they make everything African. I just wanted him to say that part where he said it began. Let's keep going now. This African Punani.
This head and the African presence in the New World.
Well, they showing it to you the exactly origin, Negroid, the basic origin for these peoples.
Why do you think they made they would carve a Negroid head?
See how he said Negroid, black, Negroid, black, not African, black people, black Americans, not Africans.
What would be the significance of that?
To show when these people was arrived to this continent. They tried to demonstrate when they arrived to America. And that was before Christ. About 1200 years BC was the time when they made these faces.
Were these heads looked at as gods, as priests?
Priest.
They were priests.
Priest.
So then the African present here was one of priesthood or what?
Priest.
It was one of priesthood.
Yes.
See, like he's like looking down, like they're not Africans, bro. You know what I mean? Again, these is priests. These is priest kings. These is rock stars, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know nothing about it. You keep saying they Africans. Africans ain't never seen nothing like these niggas. These is priests. These is rock stars, nigga.
Priest.
They were priests.
Priest.
So then the African present here was one of priesthood or what?
Priest.
It was one of priest.
Priest, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like, I am. They were connected to the source, nigga. They teach I am America, the spirit, the great spirit. Why you gotta make everything African? Like, that's a shame. Like, he can't even give you a history. Like, he can't even look in your eye. He can't have a conversation with you because you're trying to hound him.
Yes.
Are there any other heads this size for the other races of people?
No, this is the most principal.
The other races of people. You see how that works? Like, this is the programming. Why would it have to be other races of people if it ain't? They not showing no other races. Ain't no heads in no other races. You don't see no other races until 1,000 years later, and probably 1,500 years later. But you gotta ask, because I understand you don't know, baby. But she thinks she know. She thinks she know. Because you want to make them Africans, but they all Negroes. He has no problem saying they was Negroes. No problem. Negroes. blacks, black Americans, black Indians, black, black. These niggas want to make you Africoid. You're Africoid. How many of y'all niggas want to be priests? You know what I mean? Priest.
Dr. Ben.
Like you got a war helmet on. These niggas got on war helmets, game helmets. You know what I'm saying? They're about their life. They're gonna die about their beliefs. You know what I mean? And they belief in themselves. They're ready to die on the battlefield. You know what I'm saying? This ain't no African shit. Ain't no Africans out here playing these type of universal games, believing in soul kins and reincarnation, and the power of I am, the pursuit of happiness, and your connection to source. Like that's what they was teaching. That's why they were not afraid to die in a game. You know what I'm saying? Like we all come back. We the ones. We not them. We the creators.
Sertima, can you make a comment on this? I was asking him the significance of this in terms of the importance in the society of these heads, and he was saying that these were represented priest class.
Yes, this is the priest king class, because it would appear that these people were among the ruling elite of the Olmec. And these heads were revered. In fact, on one of them, you have a flat top and you have an altar where people worshipped. And there is another one.
So I'm just saying, everybody hate on my name. Everybody hate on, I'm a Catholic and I ain't this, that, and the third. Nigga, you don't know nothing about America. You don't know nothing about it because these niggas.
This is the priest king class. Because
priest king class. You know what I'm saying? It's a class. You know what I'm talking about? It's royalty. It's a responsibility. You don't have it. Shout out to the priest king class. Shout out to the goddesses.
Because it would appear that these people were among the ruling elite of the Olmec. And these heads were revered. In fact, on one of them, you have a flat top and you have an altar where people worshipped. And there is another one in which you have a sort of eustachian tube that runs from the ear through the mouth so that the priest could stand at the back of the head and talk to the people. It was a kind of oracular thing, you know, a sort of oracle.
It's evocation, brother. It's evocation. You know what I'm saying? It's evocation. You get to hear from these rock stars, from these stars. Everybody here is a star. When you leave here, you take your place amongst the stars.
This is one of the great heads. And one of the things that you should note too, which many people do not note, is the way that thing falls along the ear. And also note the markings, the way it is cut, the way it is eroded on top, because the top of the helmet is also very important to note. The things right on the brow, the way these are formed, because this is the way in which even on top, I don't know how we can get on top there, but there's something quite interesting on the very top of the head. There are certain striations on the top of the head that are also significant.
We let these niggas trick us. You know what I'm saying? We let these niggas trick us. Straight up. A nigga that just couldn't take it, being the truth African, a Negro, I mean American. Nah, he wanted to add it all, put it all in the same bag. You know what I'm saying? Fucking up history. We look at history and we get upset because they don't want to say African. They want to call up like, yeah, nigga, they not Africans. We got to grow up, deprogram to be able to accept that the whole time they was just trying to keep it historically factual. Like, yeah, these are some Negroes. These are some blacks. You know what I'm saying? These ain't no motherfucking Africans. These is Negroes. These is American blacks. You know what I'm saying? These is priest kings. These is the gods. Like, they ain't them.
Pay close attention to everything that is said tonight, and that you should prepare yourself to ask questions about the many troubling problems that beset prehistoric America. It is not really prehistoric, it is merely pre-Spanish, but anything that is pre-European is considered to be prehistoric. It is the really critical missing pages of history, both for America and for Africa. And what I want to do tonight, apart from touching on what we have seen within the last day or two at Mitla and at Monte Alban, what I would like to do is to go on to make a summary of what we have achieved, what we have seen, what we have witnessed in the last week in Mexico. We began in Von Wutenau's studio. Make no mistake, there is no studio in the world where you will find such a collection of African physical types in ancient America.
African physical types. That's like a nigga reaching. African physical types in ancient America, bro. That's some bullshit. He can't just say they Negro types. Black people, blacks, I mean, all they got is black skin. They don't have nothing else in common. Nothing else.
America. Many of you have not had the opportunity to examine closely at leisure all the pieces in that collection.
So, like, again, a face like this, right? These is the type of faces that they had 1,000 years before they was building those stone heads. So how are you telling me that these is foreigners? If they had the same type of understanding, the whole what we call it, Day of the Dead ritual, Los Dios, Los Muertes, right? You had a whole ritual set up, and all you did was make the heads bigger. How is these foreign influence? They got bigger over time.
It is a priceless collection, and many of you have raised the question which must be pursued: what will happen when Von Wutenau, who is now 84, dies? What will happen to a collection which is of tremendous significance for us, blacks throughout the third world? Because the likelihood is, as has happened in previous centuries, the likelihood is that all of these marvelous pieces which we have seen, and which we have not yet had time to photograph completely and to preserve, may disappear. Von Wutenau has, in addition to these little sculptures, he has a catalog of everything he has. Brilliant photographs taken by several professionals over the years.
He is apparently the director of the dancing group. And this is a man, and his features are Totonac. They're not Negroid, but they paint them with chapapote, so it is a warrior who is black. That is also an atavismo because they knew that the Olmecs were black.
You're saying that the Olmec people themselves were black?
No, but this one certainly was black. You see, you can't see. And here is the proof for it. It's one of the best proofs I have. This is a figure made that is between the Olmecan period and the Totonacan period, transition period. And this is an Olmec sculpture. And to be black, they covered it with tar. You see, it's a stone head, but it's covered with this tar. So not only the features and the thick lips come out primitive, but it is made black. This,
And you see that though, like you see how they take that because that man said black and Negro every time. He ain't never said nothing about no African. Like you can't. It's so disingenuous to take a person out of their current location and put them anywhere else. You wouldn't take a Chinaman and put him in Australia. You wouldn't take a Australian and put him in Europe. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you come to America and take the American and put him in Africa? That's how disingenuous this shit is. You can't just accept what we see, what we got, what we have. They want to make excuses for a weird ass theory of evolution that don't pan out. An evolutionary theory that's been debunked in multiple ways than one. Like you gonna make that old man into a crackpot. Like he fucking with y'all niggas and y'all making everything African, but y'all discrediting his work because he never said African. He said black. Black, 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 blackity, 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 black. And y'all said African.
This piece was put on the cover of Revista in Mexico in March, and shows you that another colossal Olmec head was found in Mexico, which has not been, in my opinion, I don't know where it is, it's not exhibited. I wonder if they really have excavated it. Of course, you see these, there is the item that the people in Tabasco is one of the provinces here. I mean, one of the states, is a state, just as Louisiana is a state. And the people in Tabasco don't want it to disappear from their place to Mexico City. And there are frictions between the Instituto de Antropología and the state, you see. And that's why I don't know if they've done in the state something about it. In any case, it has not been shown up here in Mexico City. But it is 100% Negroid features. And I wish we could get it out and get some of
To the choice of archaeological sites to link all that we have seen together.
Let's stop there though. It's 100% Negro. It's 100% Negro. I was thinking about something, right? I'm gonna give y'all this. I'm gonna remind y'all this to remind y'all how they used to brainwash us as kids not to fuck around with Mexico. Everybody noticed. And we never understood why we noticed and why is this even a thing? But every black kid noticed one little rhyme I'm about to say. I don't want to go to Mexico no more. There's a big fat, what is it? Policeman? Gorilla? I probably done heard of multiple ones, but there's a big fat policeman at the door. He will pull you by your collar. Girl, you better holler. I don't want to go to Mexico no more. Why would kids ever think about going to Mexico? Why would they not have to go to Mexico no more? Like if you could understand like Mexico being a place niggas go back and forth, like Cancun, like the beach. That little kids got a rhyme about I don't want to go to Mexico no more. There's a big fat policeman at the door. Like niggas done fucked up Mexico. They fucked up us going back and forth. We used to could go back and forth between Mexico. Now it's a big fat policeman at the door. He gonna pull you by your collar. Boy, you wanna holler? I don't wanna go to like this is the end. I mean, I'm saying we could think these is child games. When we was going, I did the show about Hollywood. Hollywood got Sheena. Hollywood got Sheena. Hollywood got Keisha. Hollywood got Keisha. And when Hollywood gets you, you go crazy. It's like you go berserk. It's like you possessed by the damn demons. The kids get possessed by the demons talking about Hollywood got you. Hollywood gonna get you, girl. It's the same thing. The kids know I can't even go to Mexico. So when I be saying this is all one culture, this is all one interaction, it's embedded in our mentality. It's embedded in the games we play. It's embedded in the jokes we make. We never understand why we can't go back to Mexico. We never understand why this is even a thing. It's a thing because we anime. Maggie May. The May is for Mayan. Everybody named May. All your grandmoms named May. It's because she a Mayan. Ain't no such thing as May. Spell May. M-A-E. Pronounce that. My-E. Why you gotta have that extra E on the end of May? Because they Maya, 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 Aisha. Was the girl that I never had. And I wanna get to know you better. Aisha, right? Aisha, Isha. You know what I'm saying? Like, Aisha. We are programmed to be who we are, bro. We can't get around this shit. We play these games, we sing these songs, we adapt, we name our kids after American gods and goddesses. We don't believe these niggas that woke up one day and wanted to change the name. Woke up one day and wanted to We Are the World us and shit.
As a single piece. This is one of the most difficult things to do in Mexico. There's a vast amount of confusion, even among the guides who are supposed to have mastered the material in their own area. There's a vast amount of confusion about dates, about the occupation of sites, about the nature of influences, about what the various things we have seen mean. Some of these things cannot yet be explained. Some of these things people can only guess at. But what we are certain of, what we are absolutely certain of, is that the Olmec civilization, which is the mother of all American civilizations, is not a single-stranded civilization. It does not belong to one race. It does not belong to what we conceive of as the Native American who came across the Bering Straits.
It does not belong to one race. Like this is the stolen hijack. This is the hijack shit. This is the nigga that help you find your keys and then be like, yo, this our car. Huh? Yeah, this our car. I help you find I found your keys. But like, yeah, but you don't pay the note on this motherfucker. I'm sorry, your name ain't on the title. You didn't build this bitch. You just helped me find something that was lost because of a flood, because of a devastation, because people might have, moved on and had to do some other things, or maybe because of misindoctrination or miseducation. But this is my car. This is my house. I'm the homeowner, cuz. You're not gonna sit here and act like this our car now because you reintroduced it. Hey, you remember these keys? These is ours. These is yours. This is from our car. See how they just going back and forth? This is American shit, bro. This ain't got nothing to do with Africa. Nothing.
There obviously were other influences, and among those influences was the African, specifically the Egypto-Nubian of the Mediterranean. When we look in von Wuteno's studio, we see quite a number of heads Most of them pre-classic. By pre-classic is meant periods between, say, about 1000 BC going right down to about 600 BC. This is a significant phase in Olmec civilization. There are several phases of the Olmec. I must deal with phases now, and those of you who are taking notes, please note, because you can get very confused when you see the Olmec appearing in other places in later centuries and becoming mixed up with other peoples. This is some of the things that lead to confusion.
Like that is cornrows. You gotta have corn to have cornrows. Black people, wake up. Black people, unite. Like that's what I'm saying. Like they don't want you to be black. They want you to be Africoid. They want to tie you to a location when they can't just tie you to your greatness. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the thing. Like that's why black people in America get caught up with all of these different, like somebody said, no, we don't know our history. No, we know our history. Our history is black history. So when a nigga say he black, we identify. When he say he African, we like, huh? What the fuck that mean? Oh, you what? Okay, that's all right. Fuck it, you black, right? All right, fuck it. That's just black people in Africa. We don't understand, but we know. Because that's the lens that we have. You know what I'm saying? Like we understand that black people is black people. We don't understand, like I say, you say black people in Australia, anytime you put black people on something, we're going to affiliate with it. When you start saying African, when you start saying Australian, you start saying Hindustan, Filipino, whatever is darker the berry type shit, that's when niggas start getting confused. Trust me. Because we know subconsciously that ain't us. We black. You know what I mean? We all black. Like the black people around the world that do something great, that's us. We done snuck off and did something, you know what I mean? Did something fantastic for a regular person.
You must understand that in the capitals of the Olmec world, in the Olmec morning or the morning of that Olmec world, you have people coming into the site, occupying these sites as early as 1200 BC at La Venta, the holy capital.
1500 BC, at least. I mean, at least. But you could go. But you heard him say, "Come on, bro, stop it." So 1500, 1200 BC is older than most Egypt. 1200 BC. But he gonna say he already told y'all that in the last video that they was the same time as Egypt. So you gotta go back 2000 BC. How you gonna give me 1200 BC if the last video you said it was it was the same time as Egypt? Like this nigga crazy, bro. They just say anything. The last video you said it was the same time as Egypt. So you can't have it both ways and shit. You can't have it both ways.
Capital as early as 1500 BC at San Lorenzo. Those dates have nothing to do with the actual sculptures, the actual monuments, etc. People walk into a site and start to occupy it because they find there is land there, they can plow the fields, they can grow crops, they can eat, etc. They don't just walk in today and tomorrow they start building colossal sculptures and massive ceremonial platforms and pyramids, etc. So when people come into a site, has nothing to do with when the flowering, the high point, the climax of the civilization occurs. The Olmecs came into their sites pretty early as 1500 BC at San Lorenzo, early as 1200 BC at La Venta.
Okay, so now he said 1,500. I just told him he got to give me at least 1,500. I just said that. He was saying 1,200. But you got to give me at least 1,500. At least. But he okay. So see how they try to go back and forth. He reading from notes. He really want to downplay niggas. But he reading from notes. And the notes say 1,500. Because that's the truth. But fuck that. Hold on. Because he just said some stupid shit. He said that the people coming to the site and they don't do nothing. He said they coming to the site and they just living there.
Civilization occurs. The Olmecs came into their sites pretty early. It has nothing to do with when the flowering, the high point, the climax of the civilization occurs. The Olmecs came into their sites.
So he said they came there 1,500 and they ain't do shit. Well, let me just show you something real quick. I'm sorry. Pardon me. Because I'm telling you, they came from somewhere, you weird ass. Man, y'all Pan-Africans is crazy. We back to Google. We ain't got to do nothing. Watson Break, oldest pyramid. Do the research. Yes, Watson Break archaeological site in Louisiana is older than Egyptian pyramids. Huh? I'm sorry. Watson Break is the earthwork mound complex that dates back approximately 5,400 years ago in Louisiana. Pardon yourself. Pardon my left. So I need y'all to stop playing with me. 3,500 BC before Egypt. Okay? So by the time they come down the Mississippi, by the time they float to La Venta, okay, they already been mound building, city building, swamp digging out, swamp, what you call it when you drain a swamp? They've been draining swamps for 1,000 years by the time they get to Mexico, bro. Y'all don't know nothing. We gonna say he old. We gonna just act like he old. You an old man. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to this old man. He just don't know.
Sites pretty early as 1500 BC at San Lorenzo, as early as 1200 BC at La Venta. You must look carefully at this map and see the diamond points. Those are the capitals. And those diamond points show you where the Olmecs first made their major settlements. Now it is as early as 1858 that Mexicans became aware of these sites. Remember that just like in Egypt, a great civilization flourished and then died, and then people forgot all about it. The pyramids lay under the sand, the Sphinx lay under the sand. Some things stood there like enigmatic witnesses of a glorious past. But many people continued to live for centuries without recovering the majesty of that civilization, without being able to go back to their roots. This is what happened in many of the great cities of the Americas. That for a long time, for centuries, a shadow fell upon this world. Something very unusual seemed to happen somewhere around 900. Some people put it slightly later, but something very unusual happened in America. It may have been some kind of cataclysm. It may have been an epidemic. It may have been the upheaval, some revolution in which the elite was overthrown and many of the marvelous statues and many of the marvelous platforms were abandoned. We do not know exactly what happened.
Yes, we do. We do know exactly what happened. There were multiple things that was happening over a 300-year span. And they all make sense. The first thing that happened was the sandstorm from Egypt. And that happened and made people have to move to Egypt to create life in the desert so that desert sand wouldn't keep coming to America and blocking the sky. The second thing that happened was the volcano eruption in the desert. Yeah, People don't know that America got active volcanoes. You know what I'm saying? Like, so when a volcano erupted in the desert, creating the desert, because America used to be a jungle, it blocked out the sky. People had to leave. Like, that's why they saying abandoned and all this shit. We don't know. Yeah, we do know. We know what happened. Like, again, there are certain periods of time when you can name civilizations that were defeated. You cannot name when the Olmecs were defeated. You cannot name when the Mayans were defeated. But you can find when they left. You can find when it's times when they just left the pots, left the plates, left the chairs and the tables, and they just left. No fires, no no weapons, no nothing. Nobody even came and stole the stuff, obviously, right? So you can find times in America where the people just left. And then you can correlate those with these natural disasters. You know what I'm saying? Like, find out when was the last volcano eruption in America. Find out that type of shit. Was it 100 years ago? 1,000 years ago? 2,000 years ago? Something had to happen to make the desert a desert, bro. You know what I mean? So again, they be trying to act like they don't know what happened to people, but they know what happened.
It was suggested by Victor Damas at Palenque that there was an epidemic of cholera and that could account for the disappearance of people. And that may be a plausible explanation for the.
How do you get cholera if you got irrigation? You just said they had the greatest irrigation system known to man. Cholera is from dirty water, drinking sewage, drinking like urine and you know sewage and feces and stuff in your water. That's where cholera come from. Poisoned water. So how do you have the greatest irrigation system and then still get fucking cholera? Stop it.
Disappearance of some of the people from the Mayan sites. But when we come to the Olmec morning, which I want to dwell upon because it affects everything, when Michael Coe and others speak of the Olmec as the mother of American civilization, they are really stating the whole thing in a sentence. It really is. Because in the Olmec morning, on that great platform at La Venta, we find quite a number of things that is to affect the civilization centuries afterwards. But let me come back to 1858. 1858 was the discovery at Tres Zapotes of a stone head. Now, this is the stone head. This is the first head to be discovered. Now, look closely at this head. When the Mexicans saw this head, when their scholars saw this head, scholars like Orozco Ibarra, Jose Melgar, etc., they were absolutely convinced that there were Africans in America at some ancient time. Why were they convinced? They were convinced by two things. By the African physiognomy, the dome of the forehead, the cut of the nose, the jaw, the mouth, etc., but also by something.
Like, it's funny to me how, like, look at this nigga. He light skinned, he got little lips. Like, the people that you say, like, they wouldn't even recognize you. Like, the Olmecs, would they think you a Olmec? Or would they think you were African? He looked like an African. He looked like I'm not a colorist. I'm just to say, like, the people that make this whole thing black, 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 they don't be black. Like, I know some dark people that's darker than me. They got light skinned kids. I really do. Like, shit is funny. Like, I don't understand this color shit. Why they so only thing that's gonna be black is the lips. And look at this nigga. He don't got the lips. He barely got the nose. if we did a bust of this nigga, we would think he's a white boy. If you had a painting of this nigga, you might think he a white boy. He got the Pierre mustache and he got little lips. So why are they stuck on lips? Like, why they stuck on the shit that don't even qualify them? Like, you ever think about that?
Which has never been mentioned in the archaeology for some odd reason. And that is, at the back of the stone head, there was hair. Detailed Ethiopian type hair. No native
Ethiopian type hair.
American has hair like that.
No Native American has hair like that. This nigga crazy.
The stone head, there was hair. Detailed Ethiopian type hair. No Native American has hair like that. And if that was presented in the archaeology, all this nonsense about babies and jaguars, I have never seen a jaguar with hair like that. And I've never seen a baby with a face like that. People had to find explanations for things they found embarrassing. It is similar to the discovery of the great civilization of Tarseti, the kingdom rather of Tarseti in the Nile Valley, which precedes the Egyptian. The man who found the Tarseti, Kitsi.
Man, you gotta give me 1 second. Just because this should be crazy. Nigga said you never seen a Native American. You might not have never seen a Native American, but you definitely gonna see some Indians. Like the Mayans, everybody know. Like, come on, they got dreadlocks. They got Nati dreads. They ain't just got regular dreads. They got Natis. Like, this nigga got freeform dreads. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all thought that was some new shit just to let it grow on the top and be locked down the bottom. The freeform. He got his shit wrapped up with like string. He feeding hearts to the gods. Like, yeah, I'm out here killing these savages. Don't forget about me. On the other side. And again, the tree of life. And that's what this whole thing is about. I told y'all these niggas is really doctors and priests. Some of these niggas is doctors. But yeah, like, it's just a shame that they don't want to give the Mayans the true respect. It's just a shame, bro. It's just a shame. Like, look at this one right here. We all know this picture. But it's just a shame. Like, what's wrong with these niggas? And like, these is the greatest researchers of all time type shit. Imagine you the greatest researcher of all time and you just made a weird ass statement. Like, Native Americans will never have, like, come on. How you in Mexico and you missed the whole point? This nigga in Mexico and he missed the whole point. Like, bro.
Never said a word about it. He died without saying anything. And it was left to Bruce Williams, who many of us will hear in Atlanta in September. It was left to Bruce Williams, his student, to take it out to the back rooms of the University of Chicago Oriental Institute and present it to the world. They said the reason why they delayed so long is because it took 15 years to put the pieces together. Without all those pieces, the stoneware vessels, etc., the pottery that was found, the stone incense burner at...
Does your business need to send rewards and gift cards in bulk? Try Tremendous. tremendous.
The site of Tarseti at Kustal, the site of Kustal, did not need putting together. It was intact from the very beginning. What needed to be put together were their heads. And that was not put together until the head who had a right to put it together died. Thank God. It is absolutely important for us to take a very serious view of this, because we find again and again and again that you have a deliberate effort to wipe out the evidence, to hide it, to explain it away. Why is it that this photograph, even now, I am not permitted to use that until 1985, because it involves a whole series of things. But why is it that this head is not among the heads at Villa Hermosa, is not among the heads in the National Geographic or the Smithsonian or any traveling circus of Olmec heads? It is hidden at Tuxtla, where nobody goes. It's very important to note that that was the first head found, and it had a profound effect. Although it was the only thing found at that time that indicated an African influence. It was left to the expeditions of 1938 and 1939, expeditions carried out jointly by the Smithsonian Institute, the University of California, and the National Geographic, before they found more of these stone heads. They recovered the one at Tres Zapotes, and then they went on the next year in 1939. They went on to La Venta, and then they found 4 of these stone heads. They also found, and many of you have noted this in the museum at Villa Hermosa, at La Venta Park, you have noted the plan of the city. I want you to look at that plan carefully. There is the first pyramid in America. There is the first step pyramid. There are the arms of the village, and on those arms stand the great stone heads facing the Atlantic Ocean. This is in the Gulf of Mexico. This is at the point which on the edge of the Gulf of Mexico, where you find the terminus of the Atlantic currents from Africa. Because the currents from Africa take you to northeastern South America, into the Caribbean, into the Gulf of Mexico, swinging towards Florida. And then if you are lucky, if you learn as the Africans were later to learn, perhaps not at this period, you can find a circular current that takes you back towards Europe and Africa. Here at La Venta, they began to see a distinctive art style. Here at La Venta, they began to see something in the faces of the monuments, something in the traits, the cultural traits of the Olmec that was to leave its stamp on later civilizations like the Maya, out in Palenque, out in Monte Alban, out in Mitla, even in the evening, the twilight of the gods at Teotihuacan, out at Tatilco, at Cerro de las Misas, in the Monte Alban phase. All of these are branches coming out of the mother culture, the Olmec. And there's something very distinctive. Here, for the first time at La Venta, are the pyramids. Here, for the very first time, is found the sarcophagus, like in Egypt. Here, for the very first time, are monumental stelae and sculptures of colossal proportions. Here, for the very first time, are the great priest kings. Here, for the very first time, are enormous ceremonial temples and altars built to the gods. Some things must be said about the stone heads, which you must note. There is one of them that has a tube running from the ear out of the mouth, which was featured as an oracle, and it has a flat top which functioned as an altar. This is very important because it is that kind of oracular
like, I mean, to me, I'm sorry, give me 1 second here. Because I gotta admit that it's weird. Like I said, if you can't pinpoint where these people come from, it's corny just to say Africa, Africa. Like, that's a big ass place, bro. When niggas say the Europeans came, they say it was the Vikings. Oh yeah, we can debunk it because they said it's the Vikings, right? But you gotta say something. A nigga just saying the Africans, the Africans. It can be any African at any time that they want. Cause again, he talking about a current. He keeps showing y'all this current and this current that goes from the coast of Africa, lands on the Caribbean Sea. But he said they was Egyptians, dog. Egyptians don't catch that current. They gotta get out there from the Mediterranean. They might as well be in Europe. They coming out the mouth of the Mediterranean. They're not coming from the Gold Coast, the Ivory Coast. They don't have that current that he talking about. They got lost. There was a mistake. This should be crazy. For real, like this nigga just said he talking all this shit about a current and then said it was the Egyptians though. They didn't use the nigga, please. Please.
Stoneheads, which you must note. There is one of them that has a tube running from the air out of the mouth, which was featured as an oracle, and it has a flat top which functioned as an altar. This is very important because it is that kind of oracular thing that was found in Egypto-Nubia in the period. In order for the priest kings of the Egyptians to hold the world together, which was being torn apart. The Bible describes Egypt at that time like
oh my God, this nigga about to quote the Bible. This is a historian, a doctor, about to quote the Bible for a description of a historical time and place.
Describes the great factions and frictions in Egypt at that time. They speak of it as some sort of a torn nation. And in order to pull it together, they had to find once again the power of religion. Religion is responsible for the extraordinary vitality that built the temples and the pyramids and the great tombs of both Egypt and America. Note that. People do not do those extraordinary things. Only giants could do those things. Man becomes a giant when he develops a peculiar kind of focus, when there's a crystallization of his psychic energy. In civilizations that are highly fragmented, that have lost all their certitudes and cannot find again any kind of certitude and focus and power, the tremendous capacity to have the consciousness to operate as a giant is lost. Only giants can build those things. It has nothing to do with size, because the American is small in size. It has nothing to do with machines, because the Egyptian machines were crude compared to the machines we have today. It has to do with a peculiar kind of consciousness which made it possible for one to do things so monumental that even we now, with our great machines, cannot attempt to do what the Africans did. It is so extraordinary that just a few years ago, the American government sent out a team to study how the Egyptians moved heavy objects across the sand. And in spite of all of our technology, when one of the great nuclear things with nuclear reactors were being moved across the deserts at Gary, they used the identical method the ancient Egyptians used. This is the high technology, the 20th century, looking for a method that was the most practical and efficient method for moving a heavy object across the sands. So you're not dealing here with primitives, in spite of the ancient nature, in spite of the time, the prehistoric time of these cultures and civilizations. You're dealing with highly sophisticated people, a state of mind, a consciousness that made it possible for this extraordinary leap to occur. And the peculiar thing about the Olmec is that that leap occurs with all the Egyptian elements in it. It had its own native elements. It had its jaguar. The jaguar is not Egyptian. Nobody in Egypt or Nubia has a jaguar. that they worship. There's a little cat cult in Nubia, which I noted, but it's not equivalent at all to the great jaguar which prowled the swamps of the Olmec. Why then, suddenly, they start with things which are duplicated nowhere else in the world in such a complex, in such a combination, in such an arbitrary combination? The stelae with the hieroglyphs, the monumental sculpture, the sarcophagus, the pyramids, the step and the true pyramid, and all of these elements, even including, as I have shown, the bird and the...
Now, which look harder? Which look harder to build though? This joint is like 4 pyramids. It's like 4 pyramids. I'm just saying. Which look harder to build? It's crazy.
Serpent on the crown of the Egyptians and the Olmec, and all of the monarchic traits, a whole series of monarchic traits that distinguish royalty in the Olmec world and in the Egyptian world. Clearly, we have evidence of some kind of body of people who came into the Olmec world at that time. And there is a reason for this, because people have asked, okay, fine. All right, people can cross the Atlantic, fine. You have proven they have boats, fine. But why did they come here? The Egyptians have no business in the Atlantic, which is true. The Egyptians have no business in the Atlantic. The Atlantic is very, very far from Egypt. And Egyptian ships have no right in the Atlantic circa 800 BC. The reason why they are in the Atlantic at all, in the North Atlantic, is because of an unusual situation that is occurring in the Mediterranean at that point in time. It is very important, therefore, not only to study what was happening in Mesoamerica, but to study what was happening at that point in time in Egypt and Nubia. What you have is a war going on between Africa and Asia. The Asiatics are attacking everyone in the Mediterranean. They have smashed the Hittites. They've taken iron smelting process from the Hittites. They have smashed the Phoenicians. They've made vassals of the Phoenicians who have always been servants of the Egyptians and the Nubians. 50% of the Egypto-Nubian navies are Phoenician. These are people who Sheikh Anta Diop claims were once black, who, like the Arabs who were once totally black in Saudi Arabia, became mixed with Asiatics, and you get this, what you call the Semitic type. So that you have a mixed type Phoenician, which it gets black again as it enters North Africa and begins to intermingle once again with black people, until by the time of Hannibal, the Phoenician or Punic type is African. This type is restless up and down the Mediterranean. It has its cities at Tyre and Sidon, its great ports, but it's restlessly moving up and down the Mediterranean. And because the Asiatics block the seaports to the Indian Ocean, block the seaports to the Pacific, and we do have evidence of the Egyptians in the Pacific. We have Egyptian script found in Hawaii. These guys are ranging far out. Nothing stops the Egyptian. Wherever you go, you find him. I have found him in Spain. They have Egyptian villages in Spain, where Barry Fell has shown the cartouches of the Libyan kings around 1000 BC are found at Almunecar, Spain. And that
1000 BC. So they black Egyptians? Who type of Egyptians is that at 1000 BC in Spain? Bro. These niggas they don't care. They don't care. Like, do you know how many people it would take to move to America to start a civilization? You know what I'm saying? That's like the Native American. The dude said he came in here. He's like, yeah, we walked across the thing 15. Like, how? Did you have shoes? See, y'all think y'all came around here on some Trail shit with shoes and horses and wagons. And y'all just crossed the Bering Strait. That never happened, bro. Nobody's crossing an ice bridge, even if it did exist. It didn't. But if it did, y'all wouldn't cross it. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, y'all walked across the Bering Strait barefoot. 30 degrees, I mean, like, in the snow. Barefoot in the snow. In the coldest part of the world. And they walked. No clothes, no cotton. They had their skin. Okay, cool. But 15,000 years ago, ain't no clothes on niggas. As far as what are you talking about? Like, this shit be crazy, bro. Brainwashed, programmed. What's wrong with where you from? What's wrong with believing that these people lie?
Runs right through the Spanish mention in their early chronicles that Taharqa, the Nubian general who is later to become the king of Nubia and Egypt, enters Spain with a garrison, so that the Africans are already in Europe. They're invading. They come in with a garrison into Spain, and then they retreat back because they have their own problems at home.
That's insanity, absurdity. Taharqa, a Nubian. Understand, you got boats to cross the Mediterranean. Where did he make those boats? Where did he get the knowledge to make boats? I mean, when did he have the time? If Spain is a thing, why ain't Spain in history books? Why don't the Egyptians? I mean, like, okay, cool, you didn't conquer them niggas, but you know about them. Y'all don't have no business with them. Y'all don't have no trade. If they exist, I'm sure y'all get money with them. They want something that you got. They're gonna pay y'all to not attack. What happened? Like, this is far beyond reality.
So that we have evidence of movements in the direction west of the Mediterranean towards Africa.
And do you know, like, again, he probably, shout out to Taharqa, they say he conquered Egypt. But you would have already had to conquer because you got to get to the water. He coming from Nubia. How he get to the water? And you think you're going to use a river boat to travel an ocean or a sea? River boats ain't fucking ocean boats, nigga. A river boat ain't an ocean liner. I get it. It's all papyrus.
Africa, towards that part of Africa. And more fleets were driven, both military as well as commercial fleets were driven west of the Mediterranean because tin was needed for the bronze armies, because this was the late Bronze Age. Copper was needed in Cyprus, tin was needed. They went right up into the British Isles and the North Atlantic searching for tin. And around 600 BC, we have the Phoenicians going from Ezion, Geber, and going right down and coming right across Africa, right round Africa, right back into the Mediterranean. The Europeans did not go into the Atlantic because the Europeans were terrified of the Atlantic. The Europeans spoke of the Straits of Gibraltar as if there were monsters in the sea. They did not attempt any movement in that area. But the Phoenicians did, and they were very much tied up, as I say, with African navies. That is the reason why Many of the great heads have military helmets. Not all of them do, but they're distinguished by military helmets. They are a warrior dynasty because this is a period of war. For nearly 200 years, the world is in a state of war, as we are. Since the 1930s right up to the 1980s, every major army in the world has been ready to fight. We are in that state in which both the Africans and the Asiatics were. We cannot relinquish that state in this century until there actually is a war, which God forbid. But we cannot relinquish.
Wow. So we cannot relinquish. So like, don't get comfortable yet until there's a war. I never knew he felt like that. It's going to be a war. We cannot relinquish the state of mentality until there's a war. Wow, y'all. I don't know. That's crazy, bro. I don't know. Never heard such shit.
Africans and Asiatics were. We cannot relinquish that state in this century until there actually is a war, which God forbid. But we cannot relinquish that state. All armies are armed to the teeth in the 20th century world. Regardless whether you go down into Latin America, whether you go into the Caribbean, whether you go into Africa, whether you go to Israel, whether you go into Russia, whether you go through Eastern Europe, every army on earth now is armed to the teeth, ready and waiting for the conflagration, which pray God may never come. But that was the state of the world, where therefore a warrior dynasty appears with the great helmets. The warrior dynasty appears among the Olmec, carrying all of these elements. You find that apart from the stone heads which we have seen,
I don't like that he keeps saying appears. Like it wasn't no priests, it wasn't no kings, it wasn't no moral compass. These ain't highly religious people. Like their religion is their life. Their religion is their pursuit of happiness. This is a known fact.
we see cultural traits which I have mentioned, and then we go on to see, as I have also mentioned, that when the Olmec move out of Levanta and they send parts of their elite out at Tlatilco, at Cerro de las Misas, and at Monte Alban, when they study the skeletal evidence right in this territory at Monte Alban, when they go to the graves in this very part of Mexico, in Oaxaca, when they go to the graves of Monte Alban and they look at the ruling class, not the common people. The common people have nothing to do with it. The common people are Zapotec, later they're Mixtec, etc. But the ruling class, when they go into the graveyards, 4.5% of the ruling class here at Monte Alban is African. As much as 13.5%.
Like this is crazy. Like if he was really giving out real history, it should be all on point. If people just stop saying they African, people could understand what's going on. I just told you they came from America. And he just said that they the ruling class. They the priest kings. I said they the rock stars, right? But again, there's other type of people there. Everybody not necessarily them. You know what I mean? Like they're them. They are them. Other people are them. So these are the ruling class. There ain't no other ruling class. It's just them. It's just them. Like I know, like it's hard to understand, but yeah, it's just them. They ruled everybody. Ain't no democracy. If it's a problem, they going to war with each other. The brothers is gonna go to war. I told you about Baal and Yahweh. They went to war.
Percent of Tlatilco is African. They're not in the common graves, and you can tell because side by side with the native.
He just said they're royals and they're not in the common graves.
You're finding a different nose bridge, which remains in skeletal evidence. There's a ridge, there is a nasal index, there is a brow ridge, There are structures of the jaw. There are lengths of the arm. The African arm is different from the ape.
Like, bro, we're gonna end it here, man, because this is crazy. This is what they got. He going into fucking phenomenology, I mean, what is this? Chronology in the head and bumps in your head. These niggas off the rocker. He done with artifacts. This is and you know what this is? This ain't scholarship. This is similarship. Like that's what this is. That's the new thing. This ain't scholarship. This similarship. Cause fuck about what the books say, the facts is. Fuck about a black guy that ain't an African. He's similar to this other shit. That's enough. It's a similarship. It ain't got to be scholarship. We gonna look at a nigga. If they look look similar, we gonna put it together. It's crazy. This nigga making my head hurt. But yeah, somebody say something. Somebody defend this nigga. I dropped the link. Y'all gotta defend this nigga. He done went off the Richter. Come on now. I'm gonna give y'all 2 minutes. Hit the link. I'm gonna redrop the link. I don't want no scared cats in the building. I thought y'all was Pan Africans. Huh? Cause this nigga crazy right here. He done lost his mind. I never heard such a thing. Like some of the stuff he just said today. Like, let me drop this link. Yeah, some of the stuff I heard today, brother, you can't even say in the English language. You know what I'm saying? Like, this nigga gotta make up words to say this shit. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I understand. Y'all don't want to get beat up. I'm not trying to beat up nobody. I really wanted some understanding. I know everybody don't want to talk to Priest King. Priest King, his words is powerful. His words is dangerous. Yada yada yada. Nigga, I think you could do it. You can show me why. You can tell me why. I want to know. You know what I'm saying? But I get it though. I wouldn't want to follow this nigga either. Why would I want to follow this nigga? Right? This nigga crazy. Especially he talking weird ass shit like this, like whatever this just is.
Side by side with the native, you're finding a different nose bridge, which remains in skeletal evidence. There's a
like, you know what I mean? Similarship. Similarship. Somebody tell me about why we replace scholarship with similarship. Like that's the hidden science. What is this? This nigga weird, bro. I'm just saying he's the man. I love him. I don't think he intentionally did this shit. Like I said, I be thinking these niggas be having good hearts. They just want to see black people together. But it's like you bigging up a culture that like I said, if you look back at these Olmecs and you talking all this race first shit, all this super blackity black shit, and you not super blackity black, it gotta be scary. It's a red flag. He everybody else blackity blackity black, but he light skinned and shit. Hazel eyes ass nigga. No disrespect. Everybody like I'll be sure. Christopher Williams, that was something different. But hey, I ain't mad at you because you light skinned. But I don't like the fact that these light skinned niggas always want you to be black as shit. Oh, if they ain't super black, they ain't Indian. When we copper colored, we like black. We play the black game. But I'm just saying, y'all just take the whole shit too far where you gotta be black. When black is really just a whoosh. It's like it's a deviation and it's a purity. It's we not man,
and we pure. So y'all niggas ain't pure. These Africans are scared. Think I'm doing more damage to anybody. These Africans are scared work. You know? But yeah, I ain't gonna keep holding y'all up because they don't want no problems. You know what I'm saying? I just want to know though. Can somebody help me out? The bro said something about the Hebrews and that the Hebrew got the real information. Somebody help me understand. What's the God saying? Knowledge can't oversee essence. I don't know what that means, but it sounds powerful. You know what I'm saying? Knowledge can't oversee essence. Okay, I get it. What you saying? Is you saying that? Because again, knowledge. I mean, you know, knowledge is some book shit. Knowledge is a nigga. Do you know what a unicorn is? Like we know, we got knowledge of a unicorn, right? I get what you're saying, but it's like your essence and shit. Like you should know who you are. You should feel different. I feel you. If that's what you're saying, which I'm thinking, because these niggas don't feel different. The essence is there, ain't there? It's poor ass nigga. I say, man, it's sad to hear these niggas similar shit. Anything that's similar. You know, like again, we'd be in a much better place, bro, if these niggas ain't throw all this African shit in one bag and then try to put it on everybody. We'd be in a way better place. They books, no dumb. They books is garbage. I'm telling you, bro. They books is garbage. But yeah, man, we 12 o'clock, 3 hours, 4 hours in. Peace to the God Just See in our building. Shout out to everybody for rocking with us on a super Saturday. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. I thought this was interesting. You know, I know nobody want to talk. Niggas be scared. They think the priest gonna cut their head off. You know, you probably right. But tell them, just we ain't gonna be mean about it, right? We just gonna hit you with the truth, right? But yeah, this nigga crazy. He weird, and everybody that believe this weird similar ship instead of scholarship, y'all gonna keep having emotional problems. He was sent to steal America, just like the rest of these niggas. Man, listen, nobody told you today. I love you. Love being in love with ya. Peace.